Good evening and welcome to the the Regeneration, Culture and Environment Overview Scrutiny Committee on the 12th of June 2025. We've got quite a varied agenda tonight, so we'll get on with item 1. Are there any apologies for absence at all? Councillor Brake?
Councillor Doe and Councillor Barrett, who might have been substituted for him, and I'm here as a substitute for Councillor Doe.
Excellent, thank you very much. And Councillor Halgroff-Scott?
Good evening, Chair. Yes, I'm here subbing for Councillor Paula Hamilton, and Councillor Campbell is en route, stuck in traffic.
Thank you. Okay. Being there's no other apologies, we'll move on to the record of the previous meeting. Can I sign the record of the meeting held on the 25th of March 2025 as correct? Great. Thank you. Okay. Urgent matters, there are none. Declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests and other significant interests. Are there any of these to report tonight? Okay, well, thank you very much. So we'll move on to the first item, which is a members' item with our colleagues at Southern Water today. I submitted this members' item myself because I thought it would be useful for us to speak with Southern Water. And I thank colleagues who are here today, which I'm sure you introduce yourself in a second, for attending this meeting. Part of the basis of this is that a lot of us as councillors do get a lot of feedback from members of the community in areas that we represent. And so we thought it'd be useful at the Regeneration, Culture and Environment Committee tonight to really understand what Southern Water is doing in terms of investment for the area, understand some of the challenges that you're facing, but also to discuss a number of issues that us as councillors would have experienced either ourselves or colleagues in our area. So in terms of the agenda item itself, there was 5 specific points. One was around Southern Water to provide an update on current operational performance and planned investment in the Medway Council area. Secondly, to hear from local representatives with regard to the operation of Southern Water in their areas and how Medway residents experience their services and interact with this organisation. Thirdly, was to discuss operational investment and how this interacts with other key infrastructure, in particular the road network, and how impacts are assessed, coordinated and mitigated. To hear also from Southern Water about their short-term plans to upgrade existing infrastructure to reduce the incidence of emergency repairs. And finally, it was to hear Southern Water's views on the challenges of building 28,000 homes in Medway over the next 20 years as set out in the upcoming local plan. So thank you very much for your attendance tonight, and I understand one of your colleagues isn't here, and I'm sure you introduced that. So we're going to start with a bit of a presentation from you, I understand, and then open the floor to contributions from members. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening. Thank you for inviting us here. I'll do some introductions first and explain why we've got a colleague missing with us. I'm Mike Russell. I'm Stakeholder Engagement Manager for Kent, which naturally covers Medway. Effectively, my role is to bring in specialists like Paul, who I'll introduce, for their knowledge, for their know-how, for their understanding, to explain to groups like yourselves, either one-to-one in moments like this, maybe via email or in community groups, about the work that we're doing. So that's my role. What I'm effectively saying is I have no technical knowledge. My job is to help us engage better. Make no bones about it, for Southern Water, we have a reputation rebuild strategy. We're not going to hide away from it that the company's had a difficult time in the past and needs to work on that reputation. And that's my role, is to help the organisation rebuild its reputation by working with organisations like Medway Council, with local communities, wherever we can. I'll stop there and let Paul introduce himself.
Brilliant, thank you. So yes, good evening everyone. So my name is Paul Morgan. I'm the Regional Operations Manager. I'm not got a promotion. I've been in Southern Water for only 2 months now, so still new, still learning Southern Water and how we work and sort of how we operate. Prior to that, I was in Thames Water, so I worked in Thames Water for 8 years, working in the waste sector, specialising in waste networks and waste pumping. So got a good idea and overview and history in this field. I think is that it? Yeah, that's about it from me.
Many thanks for that, Paul. I'll just explain. Our colleague Tom Williams is not able to be with us tonight. Unfortunately, he's had a family emergency, which means one of his children is in hospital tonight, and he's staying with the child with his wife as well. So unfortunately, he can't be here. There are aspects of his part of the business which I'll come on to in the slide deck. It's quite specialist. We do have two quite different sides of the business. Unfortunately, we won't be able to talk to those slides, but we'll be able to provide them to you. If you've got any questions, we'll take them away and we can look at how we can engage with you on Tom's side of the business. So if I start to explain that in just a little bit more detail, while Paul and Tom have the same job titles, although Paul's been promoted to director in the last 5 minutes, they have the same job titles in terms of managers for operations. Paul deals with the wastewater network, while Tom deals with the water network. A very simple definition of that would be Tom, who's unfortunately not able to join us, is here, to be here, sorry, I should say, is when you turn the tap, that's Tom's part of the world. He provides the water that comes into your property. Paul deals with it as it makes its way out of your property, through the network and up into the treatment works. A very basic kind of layman's explanation from my point of view. So we had intended to split the presentation to cover the brief, and thank you very much for the brief that you provided in advance, because that will help us greatly. We had intended to cut it into 4 separate sections. I will still give you an overview on Medway, on Southern Water's work in Medway, and also a little bit on Southern Water's business plan. Paul will then go on and talk to you in detail about the investment, sort of things we have planned on the wastewater network. We won't be able to do the water side of it, but we'll see what questions come up from that, and obviously we'll make sure you have the presentation. And then I will go on and I will cover off what we call future growth, so the house building challenge that the chairman, Councillor Field, raised at the beginning of that. All in all, with those 3 sections, we do anticipate that our presentation will only last around 10 or 15 minutes, if that. It certainly won't be death by PowerPoint. We know you'll be keen to ask us questions and get out as much detail as you possibly can out of us. So as explained about my role, as a stakeholder engagement manager for Kent, my role is leading the engagement, most often with local authorities. That's officers and councillors on a one-to-one basis, or in groups like this, on topics concerning Southern Water across any channel, as I say, meetings, events, whatever it would be. Most of the time, I'll be relying on specialists in the business like Tom and Paul to bring that engagement to life for you through their knowledge and expertise. But if we just focus for a second on our work in Medway specifically, Southern Water almost completely provides the drinking water and the wastewater services in Medway. So that's actually quite a rare occurrence for Southern Water as a business. Some of you may know that we operate across Kent, East and West Sussex, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. It might be a little bit unkind to call it a patchwork quilt of provision after privatisation, but you end up in certain areas where, in Medway, where it fits quite neatly, we provide the water and the wastewater services. You then go further down the road to, say, somewhere like Canterbury, where I live, and you have Southern Water doing the wastewater side. You have South East Water providing the water provision. As 2 organisations, they work really well together, and you get one separate bill, but there are people in the world in this country, who have 2 suppliers like that for waste and drinking water, and they get 2 separate bills. So you can understand from a customer or a stakeholder's point of view, when you go to engage with the water companies, from that very basis, it can start off being quite confusing because you're not sure who's providing you with what. Fortunately, we don't have that challenge in Medway. We don't have that level of being disjointed. Coming on to Southern Water's business plan, this is our biggest ever programme that's starting now. It started in April. So like many infrastructure providers, Southern Water works in 5-year business planning investment cycles. You guys will probably be aware of the work of, like, say, companies like National Highways, who I used to work for. They work in 5-year cycles as well, because the size and scale of what's expected to be delivered requires that kind of 5-year funding to be able to do that. The plan that Southern Water has just put into action on April for 2025 to 2030, as I say, is the biggest ever investment programme. I don't want to bore you with numbers, but it's £7.8 billion. That includes the retail side of the business, and it's nearly twice the size of the previous programme when it comes to money. As the financial regulator, Ofwat sets out how much all water companies can invest in their networks over any 5 years, and that also dictates the setting of customer bills to support that activity. That process with Ofwat is what they call a determination. They make a determination on our plans. If you've followed the news and followed the water companies quite closely, you might recognise that in October 2023, we submitted our business plan to Ofwat for this period. They made their final determination last December. After really careful consideration in February, Southern Water's board decided to appeal Ofwat's final determination, and that appeal goes to the Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA. In making that decision, the board felt that Ofwat's final determination wouldn't enable Southern Water as a company to deliver the environmental performance and improvements, particularly in the environmental area, and as well as the new infrastructure that the customers and the communities rightly expected. An important element with the CMA appeal is that it won't affect customer bills for 2025-26, and while the CMA appeal proceeds, Southern Water will continue with its investment in new infrastructure, performance improvements as planned, within the funding parameters already set. So the work that Paul will go on to talk about, particularly in year 1, is set. Obviously, we'll have to wait for the determination to know what will happen in the future, but that biggest ever programme is going to happen. To explain it in layman's terms that someone like me would understand, it's really now just a case of kind of how big for the next 5 years. I think I'll be handing over to you now, Paul. Yeah. Oh no, it's going to be Tom. These are Tom's slides talking about the water side of the business. As I say, we'll share these afterwards and pick up any questions, and potentially we've talked to Nicola about the opportunity to maybe come back and present if there's particular interest in the water side, which I'm sure there may well be. But without that, I'll hand on to Paul.
Super, thank you. So just to run off a little bit of what Mike was saying, so I'm just going to run over what we're going to be doing within this AMP period, so for within these next 5 years, and specifically, obviously, within the Medway catchment. So we can move on. So apologies if I don't read it properly. I'm trusting my eyes, and it's quite far away. So Motney Hill, so our Motney Hill catchment. First of all, so we're going to be investing in Motney Hill to reduce the use of storm overflows. And that started in the last AMP period, so in AMP 7. And with that, we have a provision of a large storm tank to prevent spills. Within AMP 8, so within our new 5-year period, we will provide capacity for growth in the network and at the treatment works and carry out maintenance on our critical rising main failure. The site features a sludge treatment centre, which will be likely to be mothballed as part of the regional sludge strategy for Kent that involves investment in Ham Hill and Ashford STC. So just on this side there, you can see some of what we're going to be spending and some of the amounts as well on that. So you can see in sludge treatment, IED compliance, secondary containment of sludge containing structures, leak detection, changes to operational practices, and that's going to be around about £5 million. Growth at sewage treatment works, so that's increase in biological treatment capacity and likely provision of additional flow pass forward and final settlement, and that's around £33 million. Lower and lower Howstow pumping station rising main replacement, We've then got the storm overflow reduction, so under 10 per annum at Motney Hill. SSOs, so green solution, including, I can't even see, apologies, including SUDS, I can't even see that, apologies. SUDS and storage to be deployed. Refurbishment of the 3 drum thickeners, replacement switchgear on the waste treatment works, and replacement of the borehole pump, and obviously some more down the bottom there as well. So we've sent the slides out, so I can't see because the speaker's in the way of that one. But as you can see within the Motney Hill catchment there's a large chunk that's going to be spent within the next 5 years. Likewise, in Whitewall Creek, so the investment was made in AMP7, so in our last AMP period, to resolve a flow of non-compliance. We've also invested in additional storm storage to prevent the use of storm overflow. Within this AMP period, AMP8, we will provide additional biological treatment capacity at Whitewall Creek and replace a critical rising main in part to prevent pollution. There are some minor elements of maintenance conducted to ensure site remains open to domestic tankers waste in AMP7 and in AMP8. So again, just a little brief description. So growth at the treatment works to include additional biological treatment capacity, around 9.9 million. Whitehall Creek waste pumping station, so a rising main replacement, around 400,000. And then a picket fence thickener refurbishment as well. Okay, so the Isle of Grain, so investment again within the AMP7 included provision of a new flow meter to accurately measure flow full flow to treatment, that's what I should say, and ensure the site remains compliant with its permit. This follows a complete rebuild of the inlet works, and at the end of AMP6 in AMP8, we will deploy the Pathfinder approach on a relatively small scale to reduce the use of storm overflow at the treatment works. A generator will likely be provided at Grain to reduce this risk of power failure on this very remote site. And again, just a Grain CEO spill reduction included in use of storage and a generator installation. And then in Stoke, again, AMP7, so last AMP period, our investment included provision of a new inlet screen to replace one which was considerably a health and safety risk to our operators. We also installed a standby generator to reduce the impact of power outages, which are becoming increasingly frequent at this remote site. In AMP8, we will provide additional capacity to cater for the growth of the treatment work at the treatment works and allow treatment to a higher standard. The outfall head wall will be repaired in 2025, so this year, following agreement with the MMO. A new telemetry outstation will be installed at this remote site. So again, looking at the growth on that one, so we're spending 3.8 million on the growth within Stoke, and then another followed on that, another 600,000 on the outfall and the outstation. And then finally from me is just a little bit more around our directly managed capital funding that we're spending this year, or within this AMP period. So we've got the names that you see on the slide, Pat, there are just names of some of our waste pumping stations within the area. So we've got Vicarage Road Strood, so we're looking to install new pumps and a new control panel. That will start this year, and that's at a cost of 295,000. Waterfront Chatham, we've got new pumps that's due to start in 2025, so this year, and we've got a funding set aside for that of 400,000. Also on that site, which isn't on the list here, we're putting together a new scope to redo the whole site from start to finish, but that will be in AMP9, so that will be in our next AMP period. But that will be a big obviously scope of works that will be carried out by our capital delivery partners. Lower Stoke, so a telemetry outstation, that's due to start next year. Improving the mains incoming supply, that will due to start next year at the Strand in Gillingham. And then Whitewall Cottages, looking at replacing the transformer, which will due to be starting in 2028. So that's just in total 855,000 that's planned to be spent, not reactive, that's planned to be spent on our pumping stations in this catchment area over the next 5 years. Cool, thank you.
Thanks for that, Paul. This is focusing on the house building targets that was mentioned by the chairman at the top of the meeting, around the 28,000 homes planned or hoped, aspired to be built in Medway in the next 2 decades. What we thought would be really helpful if we did was to go through the way that the future growth works at Southern Water. So it kind of works in short term, between 2 and 5 years. The team in the future growth team, I should say, sorry, is assessing the impact of planning proposals and applications, the impact that they'll have on Southern Water's network. So that's the network that Paul looks after in the wastewater side, but also the water supply side of the business as well. The future growth team are working short term to identify the investment needs. So the plans that the longer term plans that Paul was touching upon there, they're working on those ones for the future investment periods as we speak now. They're also working medium to long term, so 5, potentially up to 20 years. And I believe you guys are going to be looking at local plan proposals. So that's what the future growth team will be doing. They'll be providing input into local plans, neighbourhood plans, as part of that work into key growth areas. So from that short and mid-term work, the future growth team are pulling in local plans, data from developers, detail on population expansion to have a really strong picture of growth in our areas of operation. So with that understanding of the growth, that filters into the business planning process. So those 5-year business plan cycles, as we've mentioned throughout this, the latest one for 2025, 2030 that's just started, that's the planning and the preparation that's gone in the preceding years to develop those investment plans. Across the whole of Southern Water's area, so Kent, East and West Sussex, Hampshire, Isle of Wight, the future growth team are experiencing on average that they're looking at around 470 local planning referrals, planning applications per month. It's a lot of work that's happening, and obviously it's been identified that work is only going to go up. For me, that's just a high-level overview of how Southern Water works to manage the housing building targets for local authorities in this area. There's always the opportunity for our developer services and our future growth team to come out and talk to you specifically around what's happening in Medway, if you wanted to look at that and the sites they're looking at and the planning applications they're dealing with. So finally, again, from myself and Paul, just a thanks again for the detail in advance to help us prepare this brief. Hopefully we've been able to build on that brief that you've given us, provide you with some specific detail to Medway, which will support some further dialogue tonight. So with that, we'd hand back to the Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there any members who would like to speak? So I've got Councillor Filmer, Councillor Cook and Councillor Howcroft-Scott and Councillor...
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Just like to, you mentioned the waste at Lower Stoke, which has been a problem for many, many years. And I'm quite pleased that you guys have the same problem as we all have on the peninsula, where the power goes off on a regular basis, probably once a week, because the infrastructure on the electrics out there is diabolical. So I'm pleased to hear that you're going to invest money to overcome the problems in Lower Stoke, and you say you're going to start next week on that? Next year, rather?
Correct, yes.
I was hopeful
not necessarily next week, but yes. The plan is to start on that within this year or next year. I can't remember exactly the date, but yeah, we'll be in this next couple of years.
Brilliant. The other, a couple of more questions. There is a lot of concern at the moment about the disposal of the sludge. I just wonder how much you've allowed in your budget if something goes through that you can't spread this on the farmers' fields. It's going to cost you an absolute fortune, or it's going to cost us who pay the water rates a lot of money. That's one of the things. And the other one, if you can come back to me, the water pressure down at All Hallows, is not bright. Haven down there have got lots of mobile units, and the ones at the end, it trickles out the end. There has been rumours about a water tower being put back up in All Hallows, which was there for years, but it's now got aerials on the top for mobile phones. But is that something that's planned to try and boost the pressure in All Hallows? And I have one more question. Last week, Chatham was flooded. With climate change, we have lots of flash floods. I don't think the budget you got's sufficient to cope with what's happening with the infrastructure, your old infrastructure, and putting all that new infrastructure in for all the houses. From the figures you're quoting tonight, doesn't seem like a little drop in the ocean.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the Chatham one because it's one that I know of, that, you know, what happened on the weekend with the flooding, etc. So you're right. Ultimately, you know, I briefly touched on it in the slides there. We've got £400,000 set aside this year to work on the pumps. Now, if anyone knows the site down there, Waterfront Rats Bay pumping station, it's a surface water pumping station. It's very old, very dated. It's got old screw pumps. It runs off Blackstone engines. We're talking all equipment from 50, 60 years ago, which is operating that site. It's stuff that we know that we need to improve on. It's stuff that we know that we need to invest in, for sure, 100%. We are investing in that, like I say, within this year to get it to run as best as it possibly can. But within our next AMP period, we've already started the conversation now to create a report to go off, and a paper to go off to put into our next AMP period to say, this is what we need, this is how much it's going to cost to revamp that whole station itself to ensure we don't have some of the issues that we've had here in the past in that area. In regards to...
sorry. I think we've actually got a few people who want to come in actually on Chatham, and actually maybe we'll take this as a discussion. And Councillor Filmer will obviously come back to that, but I think that's something that's obviously is a matter of concern for us over the last week. I mean, my basic question is, how long have you known that you've needed to invest in that in that pumping station, and why hasn't that been achieved so far?
Personally, I'm not 100% sure on how long we've known about needing the investment for. Like I say, I've only been here 2 months, so I'm trying to pick it all up myself and try to get up to speed with it, is my honest answer to that. All I do know is we have started now to push the button on that to try to push forward to get as much funding as we can to improve that site. Like I say, the money we have got set aside has been planned in for this year, so that's the 400,000 which we will be putting on the new pumps, the new... putting in new parts, on them Blackstone engines, etc., to ensure that they have a more up-to-date lifespan as opposed to what they've had previously.
So thanks for this. I mean, obviously it causes major issues for the town centre, and we've had a lot of investment in, say, the Pentagon Centre, a lot of investment on those regeneration sites. The Medway Development Corporation have been taken forward. I think our Assistant Director of Regeneration just wanted to come in on this. Sonny.
Thank you. So, Assistant Director of Regeneration, so I'm responsible working with MDC for the developments, and also David England to my right is my Head of Valuations and Asset Management, who's also responsible for managing the Pentagon. So we've got a very direct council interest in it. So just to confirm, Councillor Zoe van Dijk is my portfolio holder for property sitting in the audience. We've agreed with Councillor Simon Curry that we would like to meet you at a senior level to talk through the detail and the impacts on the Pentagon, and to understand the programme in terms of what the issues are, the programme and the funding gap, etc. So we'd really like to talk to you about that in detail. Are you the person that we talk to in the first instance? Because we'd like to meet you at the Pentagon to talk that through.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, so that'd be myself first of all, so we can exchange details, that's not a problem at all. And then we can have that conversation, we can go down there and we can show you what we're looking to do, etc. going forward. A little bit on that as well, getting the power supply to that site is not easy. We need to redo the power supply as well to get it down there, hence why it's going to take quite a long time to do. So.
Brilliant, thank you. It'll probably be in about 3 weeks' time, diary's willing, but we'll be in touch. But thank you for accepting that. Thank you.
Thank you on that. Yeah, so it would be good to obviously take that action and I've asked the Vice Chair to obviously make that as a proposal from that, so that's there. Unless has anyone else got any questions on Chatham specifically before I ask them to respond to the questions? Okay, David, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I had a meeting this afternoon with the management of the Pentagon Centre, and they're putting in an emergency protocol for flooding. So what I would request is that you offer as much services as you can for the potential deluge that we're going to have tomorrow afternoon. We didn't have a lot of people, I'm told, but if you can please ask that we have as many. I'm told that you are putting more people there, but as much as possible, and any flood defences that you can bring to stop both damage to the Pentagon Centre and to the new Chatham waterfront. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brake, you're coming in on Chatham itself, are you here on this issue?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the interesting presentation. It's good to see what's going on around and across Medway. I suppose really my area is specific to Lordswood and Waterslade and really what happens to... pardon?
Councillor Brake, sorry, it was just specifically on this Chatham Centre and Rats Bay pumping station. I've got a number of other councillors that have already indicated that they want to speak, so I'll bring you in at that moment.
Sorry, the reason I came in because of Chatham is I wasn't sure. I'm still not sure where it goes to from Waterslade and Lordswood. Hence why I came in on Chatham. But if you want me to come back later, I'm more than happy to do so. Thank you.
I mean, just generally, just for the point of information there on what Councillor Brake, does that, what's the catchment area of Rats Bay?
Sorry, in regards to what? Sorry, what's the action plan, did you say?
The catchment.
Oh, so the catchment plan. I don't know it technically off the top of my head, the catchment of what it serves, but it is a large geographical area in and around this, literally just down the road effectively, and that's the sort of the catchment that it takes. Sorry, I don't know too much more into that. I can find that out and I can send that across.
Okay. Okay. Can we respond to Councillor Filmer's other points around All Hallows and water pressure, please?
Yes. So the All Hallows one. I mean, I was only there a few weeks ago personally in Haven in the caravans, and I didn't notice any of that personally. But we will take that away. Obviously, we'll have to have that discussion with Tom, and then we'll have to pass that back to yourself. So it was in regards to a water tower, wasn't it? Yeah. Super. We'll do that. And then on the sludge piece, again, unfortunately, going to have to take that away and speak to our treatment team. I sort of pick up and deal with the waste networks side of the business. So that will go off to our waste treatment team, but we'll be able to provide you with an answer of that when we go away and we take it back, if that's okay.
Thank you. Next, I have Councillor Cook.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I think what I really took from it in kind of layman's terms is that balance between investment and money for investment and prices. And again, just thinking as a resident, if I want to kind of be picky about my shopping, or if I'm having, conversations about my budget and I want to look, I can go to a variety of shops and make my budget work accordingly. But with your service, that isn't something I can do. And so really asking on behalf of us all about, you've spoken about that kind of assurance for the first year, but beyond that, you haven't been able to say that. And my understanding is organisations such as Ofwat are there to protect us as consumers and ensure that we're paying something that's seemingly fair, but we also want investment in our services. So there's a really fine line there. So how can you reassure us that we're not going to be suddenly paying things that we just, as residents in Medway, can't afford, that we're paying things that are perhaps even unfair, that the prices are going to be, astronomical? Are you benchmarking against other areas in the country? How are you ensuring that there's money there for investment, but that pricing isn't then rapidly affected? Thank you, Chair.
That's a really good question. There's quite a lot to unpack there. So if we take customer bills as an example to start with, they have increased this year, but I think it's around the 40% mark, which is a huge rise. You can't deny that. Anyone can see that. In the previous 5 to 10 years, and I'm just going from memory now, water bills, and we all pay water bills in this room, you would recognise have hardly moved. Compared to gas and electric, they've not moved a touch on the dial. And that, as you rightly say, Ofwat are there to protect the consumers, and they've been very clear with water companies about where their pricing structure should be. What that has left is an investment gap. We can get into dividend payments and all those sort of thorny issues, but it has meant that bills have been kept very low, but then that has also put a block on certain levels of investment. So I've had the fortune to work in local government previously as well, and so understand council tax and those sort of things. If councils across England had been expected to keep their council tax bills frozen for the last 10 years, I think we'd have seen a really steady decline in the services that they could provide. And that's not dissimilar to water companies, although they can bring in outside investment, as I know, forward-thinking local authorities do as well by, acquiring properties and those sort of things. But so freezing it has protected consumers over the last few years, but now the way things have moved, prices have shot up. Over the next 5 years, the prices are set in terms of how much they are going to increase. They're increasing very much in the first year, but they're agreed not to increase anywhere near as sharply over the next 4 years of the plan. So for a standard consumer, if you like, that's potentially good news in terms of you make that adjustment to it with your daily budget. What Southern Water has also done, in terms of all this investment it's done, when we talk about we've doubled our investment programme in terms of the infrastructure, we've also more than doubled the investment on the essential tariffs. So that's tariffs for people on low incomes. It's set at around household, I think it's household, it should be households, of you people in this room will know better than me, of around 22,000. So that kind of the benefit level within, people who are in receipt of benefits can access essential tariffs, which are around 40% lower than the other ones. And as I say, to support that, the decision was made that Southern Water would invest almost twice as much in supporting those vulnerable customers. And I'm sure I can circulate after this all the details on our website to that, and it would be fantastic if Medway could host that on their website, because I don't think people recognise that support is available. The range of support from Southern Water to help people pay their bills is massive. So we've gone to the very far end of the scale, but trying to understand or answer your question, I should say, around those levels of investments and what that means for people's bills. It's definitely not easy, and it's not me, beating the drum for Southern Water as a utility supplier, but if you do compare it against gas and electric that's gone up hugely, it's been very stagnant in the last 5 or 10 years, and with hindsight, it's a rhetorical question, was that the right idea? Would bills have been better to have gone up more gradually and have taken that in, if we all had hindsight around the economics of the last 10 years? I know I wouldn't be sitting here, I'd be a rich man. So yeah, it's a really tricky one, but we are working really hard in that area.
Come back in. Thank you so much. That's really helpful. Just the second part of the question then is, how can we be sure that what the residents of Medway and your customers are receiving is benchmarked to the same kind of experience? Because you've compared there with other industries, but what about comparisons with other benchmarks across the country? So we know that what the decisions you're making are decisions that the whole country are seeing, and it's not specific that Medway residents' prices are higher than your industry is having to do in other parts of the country. Thank you.
Again, a really good question, and I don't want to not answer it because it's really hard to do a benchmarking exercise here, but perhaps what I can do is give you just a couple of facts, and I don't, Paul's ex-Thames Water, and anyone can look up with what's happened with Thames and their debt. With Southern Water, for example, they've made multi-million-pound losses in the last 2 years, which you think, why are you saying that, Mike? Why is that a good point? But the business has made a decision to make an investment in its infrastructure for the sake of profit, and a lot of profits gets talked about within the water industry, and Southern Water is completely in the headlights of those sort of things. But it's made those decisions to make sure it can invest, hasn't paid dividends to shareholders for the last 8 years, regardless of what you might read in the mass media. They really haven't. And they've also raised an extra £900 million in equity from shareholders, from investors, people who want to see their money back, but £900 million to support this first year's investment. So it's hard to benchmark what that looks like against other water companies because I don't know well enough. But I think it tells a fairly strong story around how Southern Water is structuring its business to put its investment needs first and put the needs of its customers first as well.
Thank you. Councillor Howcroft-Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I'm speaking to you as a visual disabled, and also I have hidden disabilities. Because of that, or because perhaps people don't get good service in Cuxton, I was on my way out on St Patrick's Day this year when disabled people called me from a care home in Cuxton. They had no water. And the funny thing about that was our MP didn't know, Ruth DeLu didn't know, and this went on. So these are vulnerable people, and we had to pick up your pieces. So that's my first question, because I feel that's not okay. You know, I don't know, I'm not very good in shops, the lights trigger me, but say if we go shopping, you always see somebody wanting you to change your gas or your electric company to get a better deal. We don't have that luxury with you. And on the doorstep, because we've got a fabulous MP, Lauren Edwards, our constituents, our people are always complaining about water. And that's because what they see is your fat cats, whether you make a profit or not, getting loads of shareholders' money, and they don't see any dividends or benefits to them who are paying. And the bills just go up and up and up. And no, that's not okay. And for me, representing the disabled community, I just feel that they are suffering more, because often, you know, if they've got Crohn's disease or any other disability, the use of water increases. And again, you've got a cartel on it, and, you know, it's not acceptable in my opinion. And then my final question, my ward colleague is sitting over there. We're on the Climate Change Committee. So I saw your presentation, but my final question is about how are you how are you engaging with local communities and stakeholders, because that's what we all are, to address water-related issues? You brought Chatham to a halt, that's already been mentioned, but to promote, you know, the battle against climate change, including water conservation and the climate emergency. Sorry if I'm a bit grumpy, but old people and disabled people matter to me. I'm a human being too.
A real apology for what those people in that care home suffered. Can you send me their details? I'll raise it with Paul, because with Tom, I told you I'd do that. With Tom, that really shouldn't happen. We have processes in place to look after vulnerable people when incidents of a loss of supply happens, but they clearly have to be better, because as you say, these people rely on it. We have people on dialysis who are reliant on water, so if they lose water, it's absolutely critical that we can be there. So if there was it sounds like there was a real lack of response to that, and then being able to get through and get
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but it was Ruth DeLu and her team, TAF, that really came to the rescue. And that means our council resources mopping up from your mess, really.
Not be a recurring issue, but there could be an underlying reason. There could be a risk there that Tom's going to want to know about, that we can address. So yeah, really would want to know about those sort of issues in the supply world. The climate change one it's a huge issue. For a water company, any water company, their energy use is huge. They use so much energy in terms of moving wastewater around the business. They have to be energy efficient. We're doing a lot of work around using solar, trying to be as energy efficient as we can. And I know for me as a consumer, when we're going into a hot spell, to be told about conserving water usage when, you know, I'm armed with details around leakage and what we're doing to cut, it doesn't sit very well. So we, you know, as a business, have to do better. There has been a big drive to cut leaks, which makes a big difference. The business, as I mentioned at the top, has been through a reputational rebuild. That's been part of a turnaround plan that's looked at a lot of areas, and they have been successful in cutting the number of leaks that occur by 50%, and that's happened over the last 3 years. It's still a big number, and there's still far too many leaks, which is one of the ways that a business could look to tackle something like climate change. Out of this meeting, I'll send you some of the more detailed work that they're doing around climate change, because energy costs are huge for someone like Southern Water. It's in their best interest to work in that field to save energy and help us all with that climate crisis. Sorry if that's not a full answer on the climate. It's a huge topic and one that I'm not specialised in, but I will certainly send you as much detail as possible to kind of initiate that dialogue.
Chair, I don't think they answered about even though they're in negative, the fat cats are still getting their dividends.
They're not.
What should we say? Bonuses?
Bonuses, yeah. So you'll have seen on the news, bonuses have been stopped now for certain companies that haven't hit performance areas. That includes Southern Water. But again, complete transparency. Southern Water has paid bonuses to its directors. That's very true. It's a very thorny subject, and I feel I'm on quite thin ice talking about it. But if you want to get good people who are going to turn a business around, you potentially have to reward them for that. The level of which you reward them to is one for discussion.
Well, I mean, essentially just going through your financial reports, your revenues and your budget is roughly double the size of Medway Council, so it's about an £800 million a year business. Your CEO's package was on about 750 last year. Medway's 400 million. Our CEO was about £180,000. So why would you need quadruple the compensation package compared to, you know, when you've got double the budget of, say, Medway?
It's a hard one for me to answer. I don't decide the chief executive's budget.
Sorry, you should write to the chairman of Southern Water for that question. It's not fair to these guys to be putting that type of question to them.
I mean, you know, obviously you cannot speak, but I do think that a lot of our residents do read these papers and do get those concerns. And, you know, given what we're hearing in terms of bills rising, et cetera, and, you know, so, you know, it is something that we certainly feel that our residents want answered. I'm going to, is it okay to move on to Councillor Etheridge now?
Okay, we know.
No, Councillor Etheridge is next.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your report. My colleague here has already highlighted the issues in rural communities, especially in terms of low water pressure and power cuts. However, when we consider the pumping station out at Cliff, I can't believe that every problem we have for that pumping station is due to a power cut. Only recently we had to have a number of lorries out there emptying it out. So my question is, or my statement is, and hopefully you'll be able to answer me, I was really disappointed not to see the Cliff pumping station on your list of planned maintenances. And I'd like to know, if it's not within your current budget, when will it be? Thank you.
So when you say Cliff Pumping Station, do you have the full name, or is it just Cliff Pumping?
Cliff Pumping Station at Reed Street, right at the far end of Cliff.
Right, okay.
Just follow your nose, you'll find it.
Okay, no worries. Again, apologies. I'm going to need to take that away, and I'll have to come back to you on that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Before I start with my questions, I just wanted to address the point that Councillor Lawrence made. I can't imagine that this is news to Paul and Mike that we were going to ask about bonuses. I'm pretty sure that they would have expected that. This is an overview and scrutiny committee. We had a members' item. We invited representatives from Southern Water to come and speak to us. It's very much within the remit of this committee to ask about their financial model and how they invest their money in essential services for the public. If they can't answer it, that's fair enough. They can always say, we'll come back to you with a written response from a chair or from a CEO. And I'm sure the chair can write to the chairman if he wants to. But, I mean, thank you for coming, Paul and Mike. And I'm sorry if that was an awkward question, but I don't think it was inappropriate at all. So, that. I have a couple of questions. I wanted to ask about how you dig up roads in Medway. So one of the main things that constituents ask us about all the time is road conditions in Medway. It's the most visible sign of sort of decay and neglect in the public realm. So they ask a lot about that, why road conditions are so bad. Now, since we took over this administration in 2023, there have been significant efforts put in to have a plan of resurfacing of the roads. And there was an example recently in Maidstone Road in Rochester, where the road was resurfaced, not like a band-aid fix of potholes, but resurfacing of the road. I think within 3 days or something like that, it was dug up because you had to fix something. Now, that's just an example. I cannot tell you how frustrating that is. What are we supposed to tell our residents? Because, you know, they pay taxes for this. We did the job. And then, you know, you guys come in. No, I understand you have to do essential maintenance. Of course you do. Isn't there a way you can preempt some of this? There must be something. Do you take any learnings away? Do you sort of think about these particular patches are vulnerable, they're at risk, we can do something to stop this? Or work with the council, figure out, like work with us to work with Ruth's team to see what the plans are in terms of resurfacing and see if there's something you can do at that time in a coordinated way to stop this situation happening, because it's incredibly frustrating. Shall I just wait at that point and then come back to the next two questions?
Absolutely, and then I'll have my roadworks back at the chair.
Okay.
So obviously, if our works are planned, I would love to believe that we do come through to you guys and ask the question of, can we collaborate here? Can we work collectively together? If our works are reactive, if we have to go in on emergency reasons, obviously I can only speak for the waste side of the business. I know obviously the water mains, etc., the clean water mains are all pressurised mains as well. If they go, unfortunately they go, and we would have to go out to site and react to that as an emergency. From my side of things, if we've got a burst rising main, for example, which again is a pressurised main full of sewage, we're going to need to go out to site and we're going to need to dig down and we're going to need to repair that as quickly as we possibly can. I would love to believe that us as Southern Water, we do make those steps to ensure that if we have got work that is planned in, that we need to plan something in for a month's time or 2 months' time if it is preventative maintenance, etc., on an asset, then we would come through to you guys and we would ask that question.
So one example actually recently was, I represent Strood North, and there was recently a shutdown for emergency works, for gas works, for about 10 days, and that clobbered up the runway system. At the same time, you were doing carriageway works in a little alleyway on footway only works, and then for some reason one of your gangs decided to cone out one section of the road, one lane of the road in the middle of a very, very sensitive location. That compounded the disruption that was made. Now, what are you doing as an organisation to make sure your contractors, because obviously, you know, that they aren't going to be directly there, to make sure the quality of their work, and the quality of the work not only includes reinstatement and the safety and doing that, it's also about the quality of our road space and making sure that you're not being lazy, you're not putting cones out over weekends, etc., etc. What are you doing to make sure that is being sufficiently managed?
So again, I'd like to know a little bit more about that incident, if that's okay. If you could send that through, that'd be brilliant, and we can look into it, because I think it might have been potentially a clean water incident that we'd need to look into. But from my side of things, from my perspective, we are meticulous when it comes to contract management. We are spending time with our contractors, we're engaging with them daily, we are informing them of health and safety procedures. At Southern Water, it's our number one priority, health and safety. We want to ensure that everyone's safe when they're going to work, and that's not just us, that's you guys as well sitting around the table, that's the members of the public, that's everybody. So we do ensure that. We do have, team meetings about it. We do emphasise the importance of safety. So that's sort of how I see it from my side of things. But if we can have a little bit more information on that incident, that'd be great, and we can investigate that one.
Thank you. I actually got in contact with one of your former colleagues, and actually you were able to resolve it within a couple of hours the next morning, but still that had an impact overnight, and actually it shows us why there's probably a need for a lane rental scheme in Medway, and I understand plans being progressed in that to make sure that people are treating our road space with due respect, to be frank. Councillor Campbell, did you want to come back at all, or...?
I just wanted to check with Ruth. Is there that sort of collaboration? Are they aware of your road resurfacing plans and vice versa?
Yeah, thank you for letting me come in. There is quite a lot of collaboration between ourselves and all the utilities companies and my street works team. We've also do inspections of street works that are underway. I think the issue that was touched on, which we do have a problem with, not only here but everywhere, is the infrastructure is quite old underneath. So it's mainly the emergency unplanned works that cause us lots and lots of problems. Utilities do not have to have our permission to go in if there's an emergency works to be going on. So what I'd say is I think we plan together as best we can and collaborate, but the emergencies are the issue, and that's because of the infrastructure being so old.
Sorry, can I come back? So on that particular instance that I mentioned, Rochester Maidstone Road, where it was a full resurface that was done, and then it was dug up again. So what happens next? The patch-up that you guys did, was that the same quality as we had done originally? Do we inspect that? What's our recourse after that?
Yes, certainly. We would go in and do inspections when there has to be a patch. I believe it's around about 6 months. You have about 6 months to put it right, but it has to be to the standard that it was previously. So, I have known before with certain utilities companies where we've made them do it 2 times because it hasn't been good enough. If you like, I can take that one away and have a look at that one specifically. Yeah, okay, we'll do. Happy to do that.
It's not my ward, but I travelled on that road all the time, so yeah. I happen to know that, but thank you.
Will do.
Thank you for that. I have a couple more questions. I'll be very quick, I promise. I wanted to ask about sewage spills, because I think quick search on the BBC website says that you were fined, I think, £90 million just a few years ago for over 6,000 illegal sewage spills. And the investigation put those spills down to negligence rather than any profiteering on your part. It was just sheer negligence. That really paints a pretty poor picture. So we're a few years on now. I wanted to know how the situation is, what the situation is now. How have you improved on that? What learnings have you taken? And if we were to measure the same thing now, where would you be?
Yeah, so it's a topic that's really close to my heart and everyone else's in Southern Water, to be honest, is the pollutions and our pollution rate. We know it weren't good. We know it was bad, some 5 years ago. If you look at our figures, we've halved our pollutions from last year to the year before, from this year to the year before that, and so on and so forth. We are making very good strides in that space to ensure that we are not doing sewage discharges anymore. We've got a Clean Rivers and Sea Task Force. I don't know if you've heard about that. It's a new team that was set up, a whole new function within Southern Water to tackle all of our discharges. They're a team that have been put in place for the last 2 years, and they're still going to be in place for this next AMP period as well. So we are going around all of our local areas across all of our regions and looking into our discharges, what are our most highly active discharges and looking at the reasons why and what can we do to improve that. So we've done a lot of work in that space, and it is getting a lot better from sort of what we've done previously in the past.
Did you say you've halved the
pollution rates?
Number
yes.
of, okay. That's very encouraging. I'm sure we'll all be keeping an eye on that. I think quite rightly, there's a lot of scrutiny on water companies, so I think it should be there. The last question I wanted to ask was that you've recently announced that a customer scrutiny committee has been set up by yourselves, and Councillor Dan MacDonald from Medway Council, he's chairing it. So I work with him on the health scrutiny committee and could not ask for a better chair. He's very able, he's very forthright. I'm sure he'll do a great job. What I think it's a very positive measure. I think that's exactly the direction we should go in. What I want to ensure is that it's not just some sort of token gesture to kind of meet with all the criticism that you're getting from the public. So how is this committee, this scrutiny committee, going to feed into your senior leadership? What senior level is the committee going to directly feed into? How are you going to take what the committee finds, their scrutiny, what you're going to do about it? How are you going to make it count, basically, is what I'm asking.
I'd certainly have to look at that one in a little bit more detail, but I know the chairman has sat down with the CEO. He's, I don't think he could make it in the end. He was going to do a site visit to Ham Hill, the treatment works there. I think that's it, basically, getting these people to understand, getting the customer panel to understand our business, understand the challenges we have, so they can challenge us back, so they can give the sort of feedback that we've got tonight effectively. And that offer that went to the new chairperson of that scrutiny panel to go out on site visits is open to all of you. If you ever want to come and see one of our sites, meet the people who deliver it, meet the people who work in Paul's team. They're local people who work in this community who have a passion for doing the very best job they can. I've met them, I've seen what they do, their work is really outstanding. And it's hard for them to hear the criticism, to hear stories about if you go to the supermarket on your lunch break, don't wear your Southern Water fleece, because, you know, people are going to give you a certain level of feedback when you're passionate and you're working hard for something. So I think if you come on site tours, meet the people who are delivering the work that we do, I think that will help. And then people like the customer champion panel can keep feeding that sort of stuff back up to others in the community to understand the hard work that goes on. So the short answer to the question is, I don't know exactly how at an executive level they're going to feed in. I hope they can take that challenge to them on behalf of, you know, the boots on the ground, the people like Paul, like me, like people on the ground delivering that stuff, and feed that back as a third party, so it's some sort of level of validation. That's what I'd hope, but I would have to go and come back to you on exactly how that is going to play out.
Thank you. Councillor Nesterov.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. Before the committee, I decided to just go online and read a bit of some news about Southern Water to see what the news is saying. And to be fair, there wasn't a single good news about Southern Water. It was pollution of rivers, debt, the government having to step in to restrict bonuses, because obviously you wouldn't do that. It seems to me that privatizing public resource that people need to survive was not a very good idea. What I want to ask is, you said in your presentation that you are appealing the ban. Is that correct?
Appealing the ban?
The government...
Determination.
Was that?
The determination. So yeah, sorry, I can't remember the councillor's name at the far end, raised that Ofwat is our financial regulator, so they can set the envelope for investment and those sort of things. They took a decision on what that should look like for 5 years for Southern Water. The board took a hard look at that and said, we feel we need more flexibility in the way that we raise money and where we invest it. And that's where that appeals come from. So yeah, they are appealing.
Yeah, I find it strange, because you said that our infrastructure is 50 or 60 years old. Instead of putting your energy into repairing that infrastructure, you're putting your energy to rewarding the people on top, which obviously resolves in losing the trust of the population.
I'd have to disagree that that's where the energy is going. I take your point in terms of bonuses, and we've been around that, and it's a thorny issue. But in terms of the appealing the determination, it's not about bonuses. It's about one organisation's view around where it feels the infrastructure investment needs to be, and a financial regulator potentially saying, in layman's terms, we feel you can sharpen your pencil, we feel you can do this potentially for less. So it's not about bonus, it's about the level of investment in the infrastructure and a difference of opinion. Not that numbers matter, but Southern Water aren't alone in that. There's 5 other water companies who have appealed their determination. Doesn't make them right just because they have, but they're obviously of a similar view, and I believe 5 is the highest number that's ever appealed Ofwat's determination. So there's obviously a strength of feeling within water companies about the settlement that they need to have.
I think the feeling, the bad feeling for water companies, it's not the people that work for you on the ground. Obviously, they are working hard to fix the issues, and I'm sure the public considers them doing a very good job. It's the people on top that people don't see as doing that much, getting rewarded much more than people actually on the ground resolving the issues. I want to talk about investment. You also mentioned that there will be billions of investment until from 2025 to 2030. How much of that money will come to Medway? What % of that?
Was it on the slide for Medway? Let me see if it is. Does it cover it on the slide? Apology if it's gone to sleep. I know it's over £1 billion for Kent as a whole. I can get you the figure.
I think 1.5 billion it was for Kent.
For Kent, yeah.
I'm not sure, but...
How much for Medway? I'll go away and find out for you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Chair, honestly, the level of questioning has been quite dismal, I have to say. Thank you for coming, and I think, Paul, you want to go back and speak to your boss about being chucked into this lion's den, only having been in the company for 2 months. I had some general points to make. I think Ofwat have done a terrible job regulating the water industry. They've kept bills down for obvious reasons, but poor reasons. They've not held you accountable to a high enough standard, particularly for the escape of wastewater. And I'm really pleased that you acknowledge that in terms of the comment you made about reputational rebuilding. But actually, you know, the more sensible of us in this room will be judging you on your results. And it's good to hear that you've reduced illegal sewage dumped into our rivers by a half. Whilst you covered a lot about Medway there, of course, Medway is on the Medway, and you know what you do in places like Faversham and Whitstable also has an impact because of the tidal flow. So maybe you can make some comments about the work that's going on there. I wanted to raise with you that bills are rising by 46%. Actually, there's some fair comments that have been made about that, but I don't see your investment happening at the same pace as that 46%. That 46% is coming in today, what's in, but the investment is over 5 years. So why can't you speed up that investment so that we can see much more bang for that 46%? And I'm assuming you're going to be held at probably inflation or thereabouts for the remainder of the period. I think Ruth made the point about the state of the general state of the infrastructure. It's probably the same across the country. But do you have a plan for replacing water mains? I know it's not your bag, but it would be good to hear what that plan is. Can we see that plan? You know, we do get notifications from you when you're going to do works. And actually, in terms of repairing the carriageway, I tend to find actually the utilities don't do a too bad a job. There's, you know, I've seen in parts of my ward, which is Hempstead and Wigmore, where utilities have come in and actually done a pretty good job in digging up the road and then repairing it. So is there anything you can let us have in terms of plans to replace the water mains across Medway? That might be a 20-year plan to replace it all. Are we doing things like splitting get the rainwater from the sewage water, for example, because that's one of the biggest issues that we face. We've got a Victorian system where everything goes down one pipe, and that causes lots of problems. It's a real shame your colleague's not here to talk about house building. We're facing 20,000 houses to be built in Medway. In my ward, or at the end of my ward, I've got 3,500 houses being built, which is rural. There's no housing there at the moment. I'm really wondering how you're going to supply 3,500 houses. And actually, there's more, because up the hill, there's another 800 or 900 houses being built. Can you just say something about the more strategic approach, like reservoirs, water supply, maintaining the pressure? How does that all fit into that investment? I didn't see any of that in that investment plan. How are you going to supply? I've calculated around about 50,000 new residents over the next 20 years in Medway. Where is that water coming from? I think it's absolutely vital. Can you assure us that when you're doing repairs or you're doing upgrades, you're actually building extra capacity into the system as you're going? There's no point just replacing a 1950s pump with a 2020 pump when actually you need to be future-proofing some of this work, because there's nothing worse and more frustrating when you do a load of work and then 3 or 4 years later you've got to come back and do it again because we built no extra capacity into the system. Did I have anything else? Oh, I'd really like to understand the impact of national insurance rises on your investment decisions. How much money has come out of what could have been spent on repairs because we're having to pay, or you're having to pay, a load more national insurance? And I think Councillor Howcroft-Scott made a very interesting point about paying ever more and getting less back. Well, that absolutely applies to Medway Council as well. Thank you.
Let's try and take them from the back. National insurance impact, I'd have to speak to someone in finance for that one, but absolutely we'll ask that question. Tom's obviously not here. He wouldn't be able to answer that around the impact of a number of new homes and the water supply for that. But a really good starting place for that would be our water resources management plan. That's a plan that's staggered in, I think it's 5, 10, 25 and 50-year plans. And the reservoirs that you hear talking about being built, going back to the councillor's point around media interest, saying the first reservoirs in only X so many years are being built. In that plan, there is plans for new reservoirs, there's plans for water recycling. So as part of this, I will send that plan on to you, and it does go into a local level. Probably not to the housing development that you're looking at there, but in a particular catchment, it will tell you how we're planning to deal with that pressure. You make an excellent point around, and Paul will talk about this much more eloquently than I will, in terms of the challenges of surface water going into the sewage system, because Paul's been with Southern Water for 2 years, but has got a vast amount of experience in the world of water. I've got 11 months of experience of the world of water, having worked in various other organisations, and it's only when you join here you start to realise, day to day, normal day like this with no rain, everyone flushes the chain, there's no real issue in the morning. You have the heavy downpours like we do before, that makes its way into the system, causes a huge problem, penny drops with people like me, so that is a huge challenge. That brings me on just to flip around. You said about the investment in other areas like Whitstable and Faversham, for example. I live in Tankerton, very close to Whitstable, and you've got the Swales Cliff treatment works there. Don't want to bore you with numbers again, but in excess of £200 million being invested in there. They've already put a further long sea outfall in there. We talk about the environmental pressures and the need to deal with spills. There's various drivers for that from the Environment Agency. One is bathing waters. You've got bathing waters there at Tankerton. The other one is shellfish. A huge exporter of shellfish, massively important industry. And that's where Southern Water has to put its investment, because it legally has to, but it's also the right thing to do. So to touch on that point, state of the infrastructure generally. I mean, I'm probably getting out of my comfort zone when I talk about the state of the infrastructure. It's right to say that some of it is old and challenging, but it'd also be right to say that over the years probably other areas have been invested in. So it's a bit of a patchwork quilt. Some places are in bad need of renovation, other areas have seen that investment. Yeah. Paul?
Yeah, just to add a little bit on that. So obviously over the years, as the years go on and the years go by, we have failures. We constantly have failures. We do repair our failures, obviously. There will be times in which we do increase the capacity of the sites, for example, but we also can't overload where it's going to, for example. So we can't overload the rising main and we can't overload the treatment works, because then the treatment works will have problems and so on. So it's that balance, trying to find that balance. So that's why we need these mass investment schemes to increase the capacity at our treatment works, and then we can work backwards on our assets, on our network and our pumping stations, etc. Just on the piece in regards to the misconnections, so the surface water misconnections, that's a large part of what that Clean Rivers and Seas task force are tackling as well. There is a really good, I don't know if anybody's seen it, you can all log on to it on your phones. You can check and you can see where they are and what they're doing and what they're working on. That will show you a large chunk of that work. It's all readily available online, so you can just search that and you can see. But that's our Clean Rivers and Seas task force, so it's a big part of their work.
Chair, just a couple of other very quick questions. Probably won't be able to get an answer, but I'd be very interested to know the employment opportunities for Medway people that you give. I'd also like to know how many apprenticeships you run every year and how many of those are people from Medway are applying for and are getting some training, because that'd be quite useful to know as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so I can just add a tiny bit to that. The reason why I come to Southern Water is I wanted to work for my community. I live in Kent. I don't live in London. I wanted to work with my local community. I wanted to improve what we've already got here. And exactly the same for my team. My team are all based in and around Medway, Chatham. We work out of Chatham office. So we've got a lot of our team in and around the area. We don't have people travelling from afar to come and work, so everyone's got that invested interest within it. Again, we can take that other bit away around the amount of apprentices and all that sort of good stuff as well, but it is definitely something we do.
Thank you. Finally in this item, Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'm going to say thank you, then I'm going to apologise. But before I even say thank you, I do want to comment on something that I heard whispered by somebody on the other side. I think I heard the word appalling. I couldn't disagree with you more. These questions and these points have been made, I believe, are exactly what the public would like to have been heard out loud and the questions given. I also like to say, before I say that, there is a clue in the title of this committee, the word scrutiny. And whilst we scrutinise, it's not for us to sit here and try and second guess what you're able to answer. And it's fair enough to say that you can't answer it. And we then can have the hope that you can then pass back, and in the questions you'll hear our concerns. So I would like to say thank you for being here, because obviously you put yourself on the line and it is appreciated. When it comes to, I said I was going to apologise for laughing. I think one of these said something about the pay increases for senior management because you have to pay to get the quality that you want. I didn't quite catch the words, but we've heard this argument ever since I can remember, that it's always justified to pay huge increases of pay to people that are already on very high level wages, and yet with certain people, especially of certain political persuasion, they never ever seem to apply the same logic to the staff underneath. So sorry for laughing, but that just reflects what I think about this. And I also would like to just reflect on when I used to teach business at further education, one of the units I used to teach was accounts. And I used to teach my students about how the balance sheet, that is the information that goes into the balance sheet, can to some extent attempt to hide what's going on. So rather than give bonuses, which are very easy to see, one of the things you can do is to consistently always give your senior management pay increases whilst you don't give it to the rest of the staff. It automatically goes in as a cost. And then when you do your gross and your net profit, it to some extent can be hidden. And that is a tool, if you like, that is trying to use to try and disguise this. So it could well go on and it won't necessarily be picked up. Anyway, putting that to one side, before I get to my main question, I also want to thank you as a company that when I've had calls to ring you up several times, including today by sheer coincidence, that you're actually very easy to get hold of. Unlike a major energy supplier with the name British in it, who would not answer the phone, would not follow through, and it literally took months to get anywhere. My attempt to get support, if you like, as I support, this is my day job, by the way. I visit somebody, I work in mental health, the person, this is relevant, the person I'm supporting has severe physical and mental issues. So when he received a bill of an increase of over £800, any of us in this room could be stressed by that. He takes it on a double impact. He did show it to me blatantly. He literally forgot about it, but that's a reflection of where he's at. I first made contact on the 1st of May to be told that the engineer couldn't locate the meter. Now, just think about how pathetic that sounds. And I was asked to wait for a few weeks to give them time to find the meter, to get the reading. Now, the case in point is that his previous bill was £103. In February, he received a bill of £956. So anyway, I was asked to wait, and I kept to that because there's no point winding people up. So I spoke to somebody else on the 22nd of May. It's kind of the same thing, still looking into it. Rang up today. They hope to locate next week. And this all leads to two questions. One is, thank you for the presentation, but I don't recall seeing anything about customer satisfaction there. I presume you do care about your reputation. So I'd like to know what process you have of gaining information and then actually using it, because just ticking boxes is literally a waste of time unless you do something with that information. So I'd like to hear what you're doing about that, because obviously if I get a chance when I support this person, so far it's not going to be a good feedback, is it? And you also said something about promise with helping with bills. We'd like to know when is available and how will you advertise this? Because again, it's no good having that in small print. You've got to be proactive and letting people know that you're helping with their bills. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. To take the second point first, we have dedicated customer officers who are there to try and help people access those lower bills, access the support that we have available. So I know Nicola operates in this area, so I can put her in touch with the council, anywhere you need her to be to go and talk, whether you hold events where people can find out what they're entitled to, coffee mornings, drop-in events, we're really keen to get out there. I completely take your point. There's more we need to do with that, because I was unaware of how much support a water company, viewed through the lens that people view it through, provides this much support, to the point where they offer an opportunity for people to access low-cost or even free white goods if they qualify for it. So I'll send you the details for that as well. So there's a lot that they do. With the challenge, the customer challenge that you've experienced there, there's probably two ways we could go around moving that forward. I could raise it with the customer team as an example of somewhere where they need to do better and can they pick this up. Or the other opportunity is, as you as councillors, my role as the stakeholder engagement manager is to be there for you with whatever your challenges are, from if you'd like to know how many apprentices we've got, for example, or you've got a constituent in your area who's struggling with our services for some reason, come to me with their consent for you to share their details with me, and I'll work through the business to try and resolve that. That may not be a perfect solution, but that's one way that we're trying to help rebuild our reputation with the likes of you, because you are, struggling to get the help that you need, and that's our offer to try and help you with that, so that you don't go away with that perception of like, Southern Water isn't listening, I'm constantly phoning up, okay, I can get through to them, but I'm not getting anywhere. That challenge is then on me to try and help move that case forward.
Thank you, Chair. With this increase, there's no explanation at all of how one person in a one-bedroom apartment can use up £956 worth of water. There's no, obviously it's generated. Again, it used to be human beings that may do analysis. These days, everything's computer led, which may be cost-effective for you, but as a piece of service. I've spoken to 3 of your colleagues. Nobody's been able to enlighten me at all. I would love to be able to take advantage of this relationship, if you like, but obviously I would have to seek his permission first. He's not a constituent. This is my day job. I'm paid indirectly from Medway via his mother to support him.
and is private and confidentials. But I mean, I can ask, and I would appreciate that offer. Thank you.
Absolutely. If not, we can go down the other route, and I can try and help you in ways that you can escalate it through the customer service team, try and do it that way. But I'm here to help. For you as councillors, which I appreciate for you in that situation, is slightly different, because are you doing it as a councillor or doing it through another capacity? But if you send it to me as a councillor and say, Mike, I need your help and look into this, that's absolutely what I'll commit to do to try and get that resolved for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been, thank you for your attendance, and thank you for being willing to answer our questions. Obviously, that there's, you know, a lot of interest, and part of the reason that we brought up this members meeting is that actually if water goes wrong, and we had an incident in the ward I'm honoured to represent, 2 days before Christmas, where 1,000 homes lost their water supply, and if you lose your water supply, you know, that's one of the basic things for your life. So we know how much it impacts people's lives, and that's why, you know, we care, and we do hear that you care, and a lot of your staff care as well. So thank you very much for coming and engaging with us. I'm going to hand over to Councillor Cook for a proposal, including some of the recommendations from people's questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you. I hope that I've, on behalf of the whole committee, recorded a summary. I'm sure Nicola will correct me and pick up anything I might have missed. So I've got some recommendations here. Firstly, that the committee is asked to note the comments from Southern Water in response to the members' item. And then firstly, the request for a meeting with the Assistant Director for Regeneration and Councillor Curry with the senior team to review the specific situation into Chatham Pentagon, looking at the issue, mitigations and programme, including that specific conversation about catchment area. I've got, secondly, the investigation into the specific care home issue, which was discussed. Thirdly, specific locational requests. So I've noted specifically Cliff Pumping Station, All Hallows and Chatham Maidstone Road. So we had some specific mention of places. And fourthly, before I come to that, just to mention our best wishes and thoughts to Tom Williams and to his family. We do really understand that situation. Please do pass on our very best wishes. We're grateful for the written update, including his response to the new homes which will come as a result of the local plan. Fifth, I've got clarification on the amount of investment into Medway specifically, including requesting to more of a long-term plan for that investment. And lastly, that specific question around the employment opportunities, particularly apprenticeships, which are created specifically in Medway. I hope, Chair, that I've captured everything there.
Thank you, okay.
Thank you.
Is that seconded? Thank you. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much for your attendance now. I'm going to suggest that we have the next item, attendance of the portfolio holder for business management, before we have a short break. Thank you very much. Thank you. And again, send regards to your colleague and their family. Okay, thank you very much all. We're now on to the next item, attendance of portfolio holder for business management. I'd like to thank Councillor Van Dijk for being patient with the first item, and I'm looking forward to you introducing the report.
Okay, oh, right, so you want me to introduce, sorry.
Only just a brief overview, you don't need to do it.
I'm a bit phased because we were being attacked by flying ants over there, so... Okay. Right.
I was going to say that would be an interesting first scrutiny question about properties here and
yeah,
looking after them.
So tonight we're looking at three services: bereavement and registration and property services. As set out on the papers, I may as well go straight into questions, really.
Is there anyone who's got any questions on the report provided by the... Yes, Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Van Dijk, for coming along. I really had... I could only actually extract a couple of questions because obviously my mind was thinking about all the things you have responsibility for, and then I had to drag myself back to what's actually within this committee.
Okay.
Yeah, so just in terms of the property disposal programme, there's a lot of... and Sonny and I have had a number of conversations. I just wonder if you can give us an update on how that is actually going, because we're staffed up now. I'm just wondering how much interest we've had for some of the properties on the disposal list, what the timescales are, and obviously the capital receipts are really important to the council for reducing its debt and to reducing its interest bill, given the fact that the current government is keeping interest rates as high as they possibly can. Any reduction in the overall borrowings would be very welcome. And then the only other question I could find in your report, because you didn't mention it, was how's Medway 2.0 coming along, given the impact for some of the services in this committee? Thank you very much, Chair.
You just about wrote that one around him. Did well. Good. Cheers, Councillor Van Dijk.
Where to start? So you want me to talk about property disposals first of all, yes?
Yeah, just a very quick update on where we are with the property disposal programme.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know there are some, like, who wants to buy this building, for example, who wants to buy the leases at Rainham Shopping Centre, but just some guidance on how much progress we've made. Thank you.
Okay. Well, the property team has recruited 1.5 full-time equivalent additional staff to deal with the disposals. So that is in train. And we have a list of the operational properties which were declared surplus by Cabinet on the 11th of March. To my knowledge, no disposals have actually gone through yet, but the issue is in process. The Barnard Marcus auctioneers have been asked to dispose of properties by auction for the council, but another company is dealing with the sale of high-value properties by private treaty, with a local agent to dispose of those properties. So, I had my papers in order until the flies started attacking me over there. So you have a list of the non-operational properties which were declared surplus by Cabinet on the 24th of October 2024. Some have already been sold by auction by Bobbies, with 1.82 million and 2.76 million. I might have to refer back to officers for the detail on this.
Did you want to go to the Sonny?
Yeah, Sonny. Or
David.
David, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
okay.
sorry.
Too quick on the button. Thank you, Chair and Councillor Lawrence. We have contracted with two bobbies and the Bard and Marcus for the first figure of 1.8, and the other one was 276, both in excess of our valuations. I'm pleased to say we have another 4 going in next week. The week afterwards. In terms of bobbies, we've got 2 firms of agents, one London practice dealing with some of the high value properties, particularly things like Gillingham Business Park, and then we have a local agent looking at slightly smaller properties for us. So we are making very good progress, and we intend to be hitting our targets this year, and we hope to exceed them. Yes, in excess of 4 million this year, but we would think it would be considerably more than that. So we know our overall target is for 20 million, and it's just down to the property market to make sure that we get the very best value for the council as to the timing of these things.
Thank you. Is there any more questions on that?
My Medway 2.0 question,
oh,
please.
Medway 2. As alluded to the scope of this committee, yep.
I'm wondering if I can refer that question to officers, please.
I'll do my best. So you're throwing me here slightly, Councillor Lawrence. I'm thinking in terms of Medway 2.0, looking at things like Gun Wharf, for example, and making sure that we're operating as close and as best as possible in terms of the best technology available. I mean, other than that, and I'm just trying to think, if you want to come in down around Gun Wharf. But before you do, just to clarify, is there anything else I'm missing?
Yeah, to give you some steer, obviously, Medway 2.0 from a customer perspective is about smart reporting of issues, how we get rid of the 3 people in the middle of the chain who write out bits of paper and send emails. And because ultimately, Medway 2.0 is about making the council more open, but also more efficient from the way, if someone sees a hole in the road, they report it via an app or online, the ticket goes straight through, it gets dealt with. At the moment, if I understand it, I was thinking about parking. Yeah, about parking where you've got, there's 2 teams dealing with it and there's, you know what I'm saying.
So thank you, that's really helpful. Apologies I didn't get it first time round. Dan's going to come in, who's my Head of Facilities Management and Capital Projects, but just to give you this some context, in terms of how we're running Gun Wharf for many of our other projects. For example, we're using the Programme Management Office, which is under Paul Boyd, which is part of the Medway 2.0, so that's a more efficient way of doing things. That's Corporate Landlord Board, how we're managing contracts and Gun Wharf specifically. In addition to that, Dan can come in with some more detail around how him and David are working more efficiently together in terms of both the asset valuations side of things as well as the management in terms of the actual physical management of those facilities. So I'll hand over to Dan.
Thanks. Yeah. So from our side, we're working with Paul Boyd. We're looking at our systems at the moment. So I've just started with Paul and his team looking at where we've got our files and folders. So at the moment we've got files and folders on various old yellow Microsoft folders, and we're looking at moving over to SharePoint. So what they're doing is working with us. We're building a SharePoint structure that both myself and David's service will use conjointly, so that the flow of information is there between the two of us rather than sitting in isolation. That cuts out a lot of email travel backwards and forwards and duplication of documents. That's the first stage we're going through. And on top of that, I'm working with the team to look at systems that we can use that are more intelligent reporting systems on top of that. So very first stage at the moment to get everything across onto SharePoint, which literally just started looking at the framework that IT has created for us this morning. Okay. Yes.
And just to give you another example, as part of the Gun Wharf project, obviously awful that the wreck has happened, but it's given us an opportunity to refresh a building that's over 40 years old, that has had no love essentially. But also part of that is we've got a lot of space taken up by paper, and the digitisation, again working with Paul Boyd and ICT at the front from a Medway 2.0 perspective, is to digitise everything and start with a clean slate where we can. But obviously things like legal papers, some of them have to be still physical.
Thank you. Yep. Ian, thank you.
That's okay, and probably in answer to your question about the other element, in terms of Medway 2.0, we're just launching and consumers and residents are using it to deal with what I'd refer to as nuisance vehicles, which is a rather encompassing phase. That includes abandoned vehicles, and it's about signposting those at the back office so that we can distinguish something that's an abandoned vehicle, and that there are very few of those, with those that haven't got their vehicle licence paid that can be directed to DVLA, those that are parking issues. And so that's something that's being used. It is a work in progress, and we are learning those. But that idea that consumers make a single point of contact on that topic, and we'd managed to make sure it went through the right process rather than them being ping-ponged around the system.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members who want to ask questions? Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your report. Can I refer you to item 3.6, coming back to the Gun Wharf Improvement Programme? Do we actually have a timeline of when, first of all, the designs are going to be completed, and secondly, when the work will actually start? And then thirdly, once the work has completed, does this mean that all Gun Wharf staff can return back to Gun Wharf rather than working from home? That's question one. And then on 3.7, you refer to the Pentagon Centre work is progressing at pace to deliver the James Williams Healthy Living Centre, which is on track, etc., etc. Can you tell me if it actually would have been on pace if it hadn't stolen the £3 million from the Strood Healthy Living Centre? Thank you.
Could you just repeat the last bit of that question, Councillor Etheridge, please?
Certainly. Would it have actually been on pace if it hadn't stolen the £3 million from the Strood Healthy Living Centre?
Well, I'm sorry about this, that I'm being attacked.
Did you want to? I think Sunny was just
yeah, sorry,
that.
I'm just getting distracted.
Apologies,
by
Councillor Van Dyke, but just I think it's a bit unfair in terms of the history that Councillor Etheridge is referring to. So I understand in terms of the original funding of the Healthy Living Centre, the ICB took the decision to spend that money that would have gone to Strood, just to be fair to the council at the time, and it was obviously a previous administration. Nobody pressured or took that money away. That was a decision made by the ICB in terms of investing it into Chatham instead of Strood. So we can't comment on how or why they made that decision. And yes, I suppose it wouldn't have been viable. It would have been £3 million short if they hadn't taken that money and answered your question. But in terms of the decision to do so, obviously it was something outside of the council's area of responsibility.
So you do agree it was stolen then?
Well, it was reassigned, rebudgeted.
You can't reassign something you don't own. Anyway, coming back to my original question in terms of the refurbishment and Gun Wharf staff returning back to work full-time at Gun Wharf.
We can answer that if you wish, Councillor Van Dyke.
I'd be happy to answer that. I mean, the first thing is that we have to deal with the rack and the roof before we carry on with the other works. But that work is underway. The rack has been tested. There are roof repairs also underway, as I understand. So the work is ongoing. But that has to be done before the other alterations to Gun Wharf take place. So we need to have a watertight building before we do anything else. I don't know if that answers your question.
So currently we don't have a timeline then?
I'll refer back to Mr. Stone for the timeline.
Thank you. So, yeah, in terms of timeline, it's incredibly tight. We are aiming for completion, for operational completion by the end of 2026. Now, I must admit that is a very tight timeline to achieve. What it does is working backwards, that gives us a 29-week construction period. We're currently at the end of REBA Stage 2, which is to say that we've done concept designs and we're just moving into what's called spatial coordination, which is REBA Stage 3. So that's where we're looking at the floor plates and the layout and how we piece things together. Overlaid with that, that's the improvement works. Overlaid is the rack improvement works, where we've just got the engineer's report, and we're looking at the approach we've taken is to get a report of how we can best deal with the rack rather than strip it out completely. And I'm happy we've done that, because I can say that we can make a lot of savings by the remediation works we have to do, rather than taking the approach of removing it all, that is giving us more money to invest in the property.
And I thank you for your answer. So basically what you're saying is it's at least 2026 before we get all of Gunwharf staff back into Gunwharf.
So to answer your last question, so there'll be a phased opening for a start, and we don't know that yet. So obviously we'll say to a contractor, so that was complete, if you like, the work's complete by the end of 26, albeit that's a push. But we would also looking at phasing a return if possible. All of this is the art of the possible that we will be asking in our scope and the contractor, and we'll have to work with them when they're on board around which parts of the building can be opened sooner than others. In terms of answering your question around everyone coming into the building, well, again, as part of the assets disposal, you may be aware that Broadside, for example, we're going to stop paying rent there, and we're going to bring, I think it's circa 200 to 300 staff into the building. The reality is, because of the SIPFA guidance, because of what we should be doing as a public building, and the fact that we have a hybrid working approach for staff, we will never, by the time we get to the end of that exercise, have enough desk spaces for everyone to come into Gunwharf. It will be based on a hybrid working process. Again, that's the balance between the ask for SIPFA, the point made earlier around having to pay off interest sooner rather than later. And again, that obviously means we reduce our estate and reduce the number of desks that we have. However, be assured, we've got business continuity plans for various services, because some services do need desks, some services have to have space, and others can work remotely more. So obviously it's balancing that out, and that's obviously what we're looking at the same time before we open the building.
Just to add as well, in terms of the work we're doing, we have done some rack remediation work on level 3 and for the Ministry of Justice. So that enabled us to open up all of level 3, which is currently operational. It hasn't been refurbed, but all of those desks are back in use, and we've got more staff back in the building now. And the Ministry of Justice, we did their works to enable them to open back up and operate.
Sorry, I've got one more. When you're saying that the staff are now back in, can we ensure that all councillors are informed what teams are now back in Gunwharf and how we contact them? Because that's currently not available. I'd really appreciate it if everybody gets that information.
Thank you. Final in this item, I've got Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. There's been a lot of discussion on Gunwharf. I was actually going to say something about it, but I feel like Sunny's already answered it. It's just, I'm just reflecting what I hear from constituents, and we told them that there was financial dire straits, and then we said we were going to invest so much money into Gunwharf to fix it up. And on my travels and in my previous role working for a charity, one of the main things that comes up in communities, that communities don't have spaces to meet, to congregate, to do things together. There are lots of little community groups and things. So it was just an idea, possibly a very idealistic thought, that maybe in the plans for Gunwharf, we could incorporate something like that, where the building is kind of owned in the community space. I know there are lots of logistical things to work out with that. How would people have access and things like that? But I just feel like it is an opportunity to create some sort of community space. But I know that you said that capacity is already an issue, and I'm sure you have other plans to create community spaces anyway, but it was just a thought.
You're absolutely right, and that is part of the process, is to make the building more accessible to the residents of Medway. And I mean, a lot of work needs to be done there. I think it would be wrong to criticise having that work done, because nothing has been done to that building for 40 years, is it? I think it's 40 years. So and if we allow that building to deteriorate, it becomes of much less value to the council. So it's really important that we get this done and make it a building that's fit for purpose in every way that we can.
Thank you. And I mean, I'm sold on this. You don't have to convince me. This is what I hear from constituents. Why is this happening? So I just feel like it's a good opportunity. And the same thing I hear about Brook Theatre. People question the timeline on it. So can you just clarify have there been undue delays, or is this just how the timeline works?
Pleased to say that the hoardings went up around the brook today, so the work has actually now started. I might have to refer to an officer to say what the estimated timeline is for that, but it's underway now.
Yes, in terms of timelines, we're looking at completion early 2027, and that's certainly in target with the opening, which is May. So we're within the pressure of opening. So it's all, yeah.
Sorry, the reason I asked was because the contractors were just announced very recently.
Yeah.
And it's been closed for a while.
Yeah.
So that's why I wondered if there were any delays and if that's all in hand now.
It's all, yeah. With our programme, as it currently stands, we are within the time frame. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass over to my Vice Chairperson for a recommendation.
Thank you. So I've got the recommendation that the committee's asked to note the report, and then I've also noted that request for the breakdown of the location of teams historically based in Gunwharf before RAC and the wider building requirements, if I've got that appropriately, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is that seconded? Excellent. And is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to take a break till 8:30 now, so thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Van Dijk, for coming to this committee tonight. I think we're going to recommence tonight's scrutiny. The next item is the Climate Change Action Plan 2025 to 2028, and Bob Diamond will introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks everyone for allowing me to bring this report to committee. It's coming to committee here, it's going on to business overview and scrutiny next week, and will eventually go to Cabinet in August. This is the third iteration of our Climate Change Action Plan, and it's my first iteration of this Climate Change Action Plan, so I just thought it'd be helpful to explain how I've gone about this part of the process, which is really to keep the ambition. The ambition for net zero by 2050 very much still exists, but it's to look at what practical measures can we do now. It's deliberately aligned with the council plan as to the time frame of 25 to 28. So this is about can-do stuff that we can get on with happening. And it's consciously a mix of very big items, heat district networks, bus infrastructure plans, and quite small items, because I was conscious that what's come out of a lot of meetings I've had, and it's across a number of districts, is that there's been a lot of, people start with a lot of ambitions, and there were huge numbers of potential actions they wanted to take, and very big, and it kind of, the residents couldn't kind of understand what was there, how did they get involved in this, what could they do? So there are consciously things in here that are about understanding everybody can play their part. Happy to talk to any of it, and obviously I'll feed any comments from this into the report and amend it as it goes through to Cabinet.
Okay. Any members? I've got Councillor Etheridge, then Councillor Lawrence and Councillor Etheridge, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your report. So I'm just looking for some clarification, to be honest, at this moment in time. And I'm assuming that the council's draft local plan is going to be supported by a strategic transport assessment. And obviously there'll be a corresponding air quality assessment that uses data to evaluate likely pollution impacts. Given Medway's existing air quality management areas and the council's climate commitments...
Councillor Etheridge, I'm really sorry to do this. This is the climate change item, not the air quality item.
I know it is, but I'm bringing it up with this as well. It will be the same question in the next one, so I'm looking for an answer here.
Excellent.
So I'm just trying to ascertain, has the transport modelling been included within this to estimate additional emissions and the plans to make sure they're compliant with legal air quality thresholds and health guidance? And I think it's important that it's both in this agenda item and in the next one. So if notes have been taken on this question, I'll just say, repeat the question, please, for the next item. Thank you.
Thank you.
I might have to refer to my colleagues here because I can't answer the specifics of that one.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure whether the question was, is the data from the next report used in this report? But you'll pick it up then, yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Lawrence, thank you.
I wonder if we could have combined these two items actually and had just one item on the agenda for air quality and climate change. Chair, just a note. A lot of the data used in this report is more than 2 years old. And I'm just wondering if it's, I'm sure the data is sound, but actually what's the, surely we should be using the most recent data sets, but maybe you're going to tell me there is no recent data sets. That's a really easy answer. We talk about sea level rise, but we don't say how much the sea level rise is. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Bob, and say how much has sea level actually risen in Medway that makes this such a problem? And obviously the whole terminology about climate crisis, I mean, the climate crisis has been going on for 6 years. You know, what happens when it really hits the fan? What are we going to call it then? And my only serious question out of this was really, there's not a lot of money committed to this. I couldn't see money. Maybe I didn't read the report as closely, but my residents are saying to me, Andrew, the grass isn't being cut, the roads are not being repaired, and yet we're talking about climate change where all of this action won't have a zero influence on climate change. Can we please get back to cutting the grass and repairing the roads as a priority over some of this stuff which is not their priority? Thanks, Chair.
That feels quite a political question for an officer to answer, if I'm honest, because I'm charged with providing this report, and I provided this report.
Maybe the question then is how do we prioritise this stuff over day-to-day spending that actually residents can really see? Some of the stuff that we've done, for example, using LEDs, has got an actual saving, and I can get 100% behind anything that saves the council money. So a little bit of investment here saves a lot of money down the line. But genuinely, you know, this type of thing for me, you know, and I suppose I'm a little bit outspoken on some of this stuff, is that, you know, residents want money spent on the grass being cut and the roads being repaired. I understand it's a political. I suppose I'm not really looking for an answer. I'm making a comment. Thank you.
I can answer part of that if I may. So how I've gone about compiling this action plan is not to add on to any service or any officers, oh, and can you do this and can you do that? It's kind of, what are you doing already in this space? So it's tried to be as practical and as pragmatic about it as I can. So it really isn't about me going, oh, and you should be doing more and you should be doing this. It's kind of, yes, we are going to be putting EV charging points. Okay, how many do we reckon will be in? It's trying to be as practical and as pragmatic as I can through that period.
Yeah, I mean, just to pick up on that, I think thanks, Bob. That's a good answer. But when we look at things like the local plan and how we're going to change policies, so we're not having gas on our new housing sites, but we're going to have air pumps. Is anyone sitting down and actually working out the cost of running an air pump compared to the cost of fitting a gas boiler, for example? These are really practical issues because everything I'm being told is heat source pumps are very expensive to run. Now, we're going to be building a lot of public housing in some of this new development. So of these 28,000 houses, probably about 20% of them are going to be for social rent or are going to be having, but we're going to be putting in some of the most expensive forms of heating into those. I'm just wondering if anyone is actually sitting down and doing that practical bit of analysis and saying, actually, we need to be really careful here about, you know, some of the policies that we're putting together.
So I'm not setting the policy for air source heat pumps or anything like that. That will come through the local plan. So I'm happy to talk to the planning team about how they've gone about doing that, because what I'm doing is reflecting what they're doing rather than telling them what they should be doing.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just an observation that reading through the report, the last administration investing in the LED lighting obviously is helping you with climate change. So it's not really a question, Bob.
Oh dear. Okay. The next person I've got is Councillor Campbell to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the report, Bob. I'm like a broken record on this, but I just want to know when the 140 on-street EV charging points will be available. I feel like I ask this every time. I'm kind of like almost apologetic raising this again. But I'm not. I have an EV, and I love it. So it would just, I think it's really lacking in Medway, the EV charging point infrastructure. And yeah, so it would just be good to see when it will be. Do you have a timeline for it?
So again, I'm reflecting back on what Karen and the Highways team are doing, so I'm more than happy to take it and come back to you with a specific answer on that one. What I'm trying to do is kind of tangibly say, well, how many are we going to actually have in place over this period, rather than just saying we'd like to have some.
Sorry, I might be able to just add a little bit more, although I can't give you a timeline. We've only recently had the funding come through in the last couple of months. So what we're doing now is we're out to procure a delivery partner, an expert in the field, who'll be able to give us the timelines and actually be able to do the implementation and the construction. So we will very soon be able to give Bob some timelines and certainly clarify for members how it's looking. We're really keen to do this.
Thank you. There's also the issue of superchargers, the big ones that guzzle up a lot more energy. I know they're trickier because you kind of need to work with businesses to install them, and it requires a lot of cabling and things like that. But are any conversations in the pipeline for any further businesses to host those? Because I think there's one on Medway City Estate, and then I think there was one in Morrison's True, but it's just like, if it's far, it's not very, evenly spaced out across Medway.
The honest answer to that is I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I'm more than happy to go away and we can confirm what the funding is going to allow us to do. I know the first stage of it is to do residential properties as opposed to our car parks, and that's what this first stage of funding is for. But if you allow, I'll take that away as an action and we'll get you an update.
Yes, please. Thank you. You can actually notice the difference on the map when you're driving around. Some areas, they're so dense and you'll never get caught out. There's just lots of spaces you can stop. But when you come down Medway, it just feels a little bit sparse. So that's a problem. The other thing I wanted to ask was about the living bus roof in Intra, Chatham. It's in my ward. I'm really, really proud of it. It's gone down so well with the local community as well. They're really, really proud of it. So it's excellent. How can we do more of this across Medway? Because it's such a great way to get a little bit of green. And I think also just to make those bus stops a little bit livelier and get people a bit invested in it, I think it's a win-win really. So it'd be great to see more of those across Medway.
I can't give you a specific on bus stops, but I totally agree that we need to look at as many different ways to green our urban environment in tangible ways. And I think that's one of the great initiatives, and I really want our team to be looking at more of those.
I guess what I'm saying is it's been done. There's proof of a concept there, particularly with bus stops. So I feel like we should capitalize on that. We should just say it's worked really well. Here's, there's one live in Intra. Let's do a few more. I think it's an easy win there.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I would agree with you.
Excellent. Councillor Cook, please.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to ask a very factual question, but I'm just going to add a second bit on. So the very factual bit is on page 10 of the plan. I wondered if we could just please update the link to the full survey results of the public consultation, because I think that just needs a bit of a tweak. I don't think it quite goes. I just want to build on something Councillor Lawrence just said, because I think it's a good question around long-term impact and links to, and you said my question was good earlier, so there we are, back at you. And the kind of impact of this plan on all of the work, and I've seen the links, to the one Medway plan, because there are things to me like less cars on the roads because more people are taking the bus, which means that our congestion is going to be a better thing. There are things like the cost of recycling, meaning that we're not covering the cost of long-term landfill. There must be cost savings happening there. There must be things like the reduction in treatment for asthma, for example, which we'll talk about with the air quality plan. So in my mind, there are logical pieces of work all the way through this, which in tackling climate change, one, will have a world to live in and enjoy, but two, there will be benefits along the way which we can register and note. So are there examples of the wider partnership working where colleagues are either already seeing benefits as a result of this work, or where they've been able to write benefits into their plans because this work is going to be having an impact? Thank you.
A really good question. And apologies, Councillor Lawrence, I missed your earlier question about was this the most up-to-date information. It is that lag in it. One of the pieces that we reference in here is that we want to ensure that as part of this we do set up a system so annually we are looking at how we are improving things. And I'm really happy to take away, and if anyone feeds in, the kind of information that we can look to collect over time, and I can come back and see which ones we can, which ones we can't, and how we do that. But yeah, I think it's a really good question. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nestorov.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Don't worry, I'm not going to make a political statement. Unlike the colleagues opposite, I actually care about the people of Medway, and I want to do a proper job, not make political statements. So I want to ask about the SOA Together program. Currently, you have to have the money up front to participate in this program. Is there a way for the council or local financial institution to support residents in giving loans or finance for that scheme?
There's nothing in place at the moment that I'm aware of. One of the conversations that I'm having with Councillor Curry as the portfolio holder is about whether, as part of a number of initiatives, we should be looking at how can the council work with partners to make it more accessible. And there are some, such as the Warm Homes local grant, that we will be implementing shortly, which is obviously aimed at a specific target audience. But I appreciate there's a huge number that won't benefit from that, and we've got to look at other ways of doing that. So I think, obviously, as with anything that involves council, there's going to be a financial element to that, but also we are looking at how we would then work with businesses as well.
Is there maybe a way to sell the produced energy, like some companies are doing when they install the panels? They act as they sell the energy produced from the panels, or part of it.
Yeah, happy to look at all possible initiatives.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howcroft-Scott, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wish I was asleep like Councillor Brake when some of the others opposite were making comments like Philistines and ignoring that, you know, we are in a genuine climate change crisis, and actually by not cutting the grass as often as possible, we help with air pollution, we help with bees, we help with our planet. And if we don't help with our planet, then actually we're going to be more affected by global warming, more affected with asthma and bronchial, heart and lung diseases, and I think that's really short-sighted from the Philistines opposite, and long will they remain in opposition because the youth will not be listening to them. Sad but true. That wasn't a political statement. You can come over and sing the International now to me, but I don't believe you know the words.
Okay, but before we break out in the red flag committee, was there any other members who want to speak on this item?
I didn't take a photo. Do you want to confiscate my phone? I have to enlarge the print because the lighting here, visually impaired in my left eye.
As a point of order, I did hear my name mentioned, and I thought...
Was that when you was asleep?
Because I hadn't said anything.
Okay.
Could she perhaps repeat what she said?
She has a name. Use it. Thank you.
Okay. Let's come to order. Okay. I assume that all members of the committee are engaged with the conversation, but you know, it's a very important conversation here, and this is a very, very important strategy for Medway. So it's good to hear that all members are concentrating. So I just wanted to just say before we go to Councillor Cook for a recommendation, just to say thank you for this work. It's really useful. We haven't heard any rants tonight about net zero.
Chairman, I do beg your pardon, but I'm sorry, I haven't had a response to my question, in as much as My name was mentioned, and I didn't grasp exactly what was being said, and I'd like this repeated, please.
Would you like to restate the statement, Councillor Calcroft-Scott?
Watch it on YouTube. Thanks.
Okay. Well, we're going to. I encourage civility in the chamber, but we're going to go on to the proposal here from Councillor Cook, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the committee commented on the proposed Climate Change Action Plan and supporting documentation and noted that the Cabinet will be asked to agree the plan on the 26th of August 2025. I've got two further recommendations. There was a request for further detail on a plan and timelines for EV charging, including implementation and funding, and I know that's already been taken, and a general conversation around further reports focusing on relationship with wider partners, which really appreciate. I believe that's got everything. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Is that seconded? Cheers, thank you all. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item of business, of which we've already had contributions in advance of it being presented, but this is item 8, Medway Air Quality Action Plan 2025 to 2030. Stuart Steed to introduce this, please. Or if you want to, Ian, I can. I'm very happy. Always a pleasure, either you or Stuart. Thank you.
That's all right. Stuart and I will be presenting it, and thank you, Chair, and evening, councillors. We're presenting tonight, as I said, the Air Quality Action Plan for Medway, and it is a long-term piece of work because it's looking at 25 to 30. You know, this is going to see us into the future, and it is an important document. And I make no apologies, it is very technical. Because it has to be. It's a statutory document. We have to produce it from DEFRA or we're in breach of our obligations. So I'm sorry it might not be as pithy as some people would like, but it's been through a process with DEFRA. They've called it, by their own words, good and thorough as a piece of work. And it is a piece of work Stuart's almost single-handedly done, and I need to recognise that. The committee's asked to kind of comment on it and to note that it's going to be presented to the full council and cabinet. It's one of those pieces of work that is very complicated, and we're happy to take questions. It is a discrete piece of work. And when I say that, air quality is a discrete piece of work, but it is a cross-cutting subject, and it goes through health, it goes through climate change, it goes through the local plan that we'll see, but it is important that we deal with it in its discrete statutory nature under the Environment Act. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I've just beaten you to it, Councillor Lawrence. One of the key actions I see around improving air quality is looking at the contribution of public transport fleets. Across the UK, there have been various funding pots from the Department for Transport for grant funding for zero-emission buses. I understand that we have previously applied for them in some of the first tranches, but not necessarily been successful. Are we making sure that we're resourcing enough officer time and priority to ensure that when those bids come through next, so for instance, Torbay, a very similar sized authority with very similar topography. Topography has been one of the excuses for lack of EV buses in there. Will we be making sure that's a priority of officers as it goes forward and they get the time and resources to be able to do for that?
And not to do a repeat performance of Bob, but when I said this is a cross-cutting piece of work, probably the best place team to do that would be our transport team, and to do it, and they attend and update Stuart, but they essentially own that as a topic. Would you like to add some more?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So, yeah, that was one of the key measures in the action plan, and what you'll see in the action plan, all the measures have been specifically allocated to individual teams and departments within the council, so it's clear where those responsibilities for delivering those measures lies. So yes, we did apply previously under the ULEB scheme and the Zebra scheme for funding from Medway. The ULEB bid in particular with Arriva was extremely ambitious. We were looking to replace the whole of the bus fleet. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful, and we were unsuccessful in the zebra scheme. And the reasons behind that lie with DFT as to where they allocate their funding. But one of the weaknesses in previous bids was quantifying actual air quality improvements of these bids, and we were only able to provide quite high-level estimates. What you'll see in the action plan, we've actually modelled this. We know that we would get an 11%. It's measure 17 in the action plan if you want to have a look. So we've modelled that. We know what the air quality improvements would be, and we also know what climate change benefits we'll get from those, and that would allow us to strengthen our bids in the future for future funding if they do arrive. So as Ian's mentioned, I work with Rob through various working groups. There's the active travel group, as you know, but he attends our air quality steering group meeting as well. So moving forward, he'll be accountable for that within transport and parking as to what they're doing when opportunities arrive. But certainly our team would support any information and technical input into those bids as we've done in the past.
And where this plan is really important, as Stuart said, so often we do this work and there's an insinuation or an anecdote that it's having an air quality improvement. This provides empirical data that can't be argued with, and that's why it is very science heavy, because that's what the expectation is.
Thank you, that was useful to hear. Councillor Lawrence.
Always good to get buses into every discussion, Councillor Field. Chair, I did start reading the report, and I like science, but this, blimey. If there was ever a need of an executive summary, I do think this was probably it. But anyway, if I'm reading the report right, you're measuring particulates, and if I also understand it, a lot of that particulate comes from diesel engines, particularly, as a general rule of thumb. I think I see diesels in the red and orange quite a bit. But I also read in the report that the amount of particulates is decreasing in certain areas. So I think I focused on Raynham, for example. I think, was it a number of 40 seems to ring a bell, and it's now at 34 or something like that over a period of time. So I'm just wondering whether the improvements in engine technology is actually reducing the amount of particulate in the air. Am I understanding that actually the really big problem is heavier vehicles like HGVs, buses, because we've got a particularly old and dirty bus fleet running in Medway, and that's where we might, Councillor Field, and that's where we might want to focus our energy on in the shorter term, is to try and get more, I think Euro 6 is the sort of the standard buses running in Medway. I think in terms of electric buses, I'm wondering whether we would have enough power to actually charge them. I think we were looking electric refuse trucks, Councillor Field, at one point, but we couldn't get the power to the site because there just isn't enough power, and therein lies the problem. And also, they're bloody heavy, these things, and our road surface just can't take the weight. I'm hearing lots of things about lovely EV vehicles, but the problem with EV vehicles, of course, is that they're very, very heavy and they damage the roads. So I'm just wondering what we think the solutions to all of those types of issues might be. Clearly, Medway sits where it does, and we are not immune from the air quality that's around us. So when the wind direction changes, I wonder how much of the rubbish that's pumped out in London ends up in Medway, and if it changes direction, it's coming from the southeast, how much comes across the continent. So I'm wondering how much of our air quality is affected by those types of factors rather than the actual issues being generated in Medway. How do we measure that? Because I think that's important. Do we have air quality monitors all round the authority? Are they connected via Medway 2.0 to a great dashboard, and we can deal with it and look at it in that way? And I'm wondering whether, once again, in the short term, keeping the traffic moving would actually would improve air quality, because I understand that when traffic sits and it's sitting there at low revs, it generates a lot of pollution. I am struck by just how much traffic is pulling off the M2 at junction 4 and working its way through Medway. And I obviously live in Hampstead, and every single day I'm queuing because of all the traffic that's coming off. So actually, if we were going to be really bold, we would be looking for the M2 to be widened to 3 lanes in both directions, so that traffic, when there's the everyday incident that occurs on the coastbound M2, it doesn't pull off and go through Medway and makes our air quality worse. I am 100% in favour of improving the air quality, 100%. And in actual fact, I think if we were being really bold, I think I said this to Councillor Campbell once, is we'd have a clean air zone running through the core of Medway, i.e. we would ban the most polluting vehicles in the centre of Medway as a way of really dealing with air quality. And I wonder if that's politically just not, we couldn't do that, but actually do we have that type of ambition to help improve air quality in Medway? Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, there's a lot there.
Wow.
I only wrote about 4 lines of notes. But
No, it's really good. It's really good to have these conversations. Just on the clean air zone side of things, we don't need one. Air quality's been improving in Medway consistently. Our monitoring data shows that. And as you can see from the report, we're now into compliance in 2 of our AQMAs, and the other 2 we're on the borderline of compliance. So that has been a continued pattern of improvement. And that links back to your point about emissions technology. Yes, that is now starting to bite. If you look at the monitoring data, the improvements we're seeing coincide with that introduction of Euro 6 and the more tighter elements of Euro 6, so C and D, which requires on-road testing, real-world emissions testing. So that is now starting to bite, particularly with diesel cars. Diesel cars were the problem, and they continue to be our main source of NOx. And that's the main focus for this action plan, is nitrogen dioxide, not particulates. So that's historically the air quality problem we've had in Medway, where we've had exceedance areas. It's been due to nitrogen dioxide. So just wanted to make that clear. So yeah, we've done with emissions technology. On the point about HGVs and buses, the emissions abatement technology on them works, and it's been working for a number of years now. The issue we've had have been small diesel cars. The emissions technology on diesel cars wasn't really working. For whatever reason, you look at the VW scandal where they cheated. So that's the sort of the surface of the issue around diesel cars. But Euro 6 has tackled that now. We've got that nailed through that emissions standard and the tighter requirements on manufacturers. Yes, so on monitoring, yes, we've got 2 continuous monitoring stations in Medway where we monitor at Chatham Grammar School, so that's a very busy roadside location. We've also got a site over on the peninsula at the Stoke Primary School site, which is a background site. So, and that's supplemented by a network of small nitrogen dioxide diffusion tubes, which are scattered all across the key routes of Medway. So we monitor those long-term trends, and we produce an annual report on those monitoring trends that members might be interested in looking at. It's called an annual status report, and that's published on the Kentair website. So that's a plug for Kentair. If you want to find out more about air quality in Medway, that's our central resource that we share with all of the other Kent local authorities, and that's where we publish all of our information. On buses, the key issue for Medway, and you should talk to Arriva, is having a suitable depot for them to be able to invest in, to have the infrastructure to then support their transition over to buses. And I'm quite optimistic that if that was there, Arriva will be able to factor that into their investment programme. So that's the key thing, really, is that depot site, I think, will be key for Medway having a all-electric bus fleet operated by Arriva. because the charging side of things is quite an important consideration. But that's an investment that we either could tap into corporately, but it's their restrictions on their operations, and their depot in Medway are probably the crucial thing for them. Yes, was there anything else I missed?
The general point about Medway doesn't exist on its own. We're affected by the air pollution that sweeps into Medway, and how do we measure that in terms of, because a lot of this action plan is Medway.
Yep, so we do get pollution episodes in Medway, normally around the springtime. So at this time of the year, we do get episodes which are created by the weather systems, which typically you get a high pressure over Europe. It brings in a lot of pollution from Northern Europe, from the industrial areas of Germany. There'll be a contribution from London. There'll also be those local sources as well, which contribute to that. And they will happen in the spring. Those episodes have been diminishing quite a lot over the years, and that's as national policies over emissions have really started to help in terms of industrial sites. So they happen, but they don't have a massive impact on our annual results. These are quite short-term episodes of a number of days. The real air quality problems are generated from the transport that we've got in Medway, and the congestion and the physical constraints of certain roads make things worse as well.
Chair, thank you. Just one very quick question. Have we got targets? I'm sure there is a target in that report somewhere, but where do we think, we know where air quality is now, where do we think we can get to realistically? Everyone getting a bus isn't going to happen, let's be honest. Everyone walking 3 or 4 miles to work isn't going to happen. But where do we think we can get to with some realistic, practical, pragmatic action?
So the main ambition for the action plan is to get compliance within our air quality management area. So I'm quite optimistic we're going to see that compliance in all of the AQMAs within the next few years. So we've got a period of time now where we have to have an action plan, but we are tending towards compliance quite comfortably. So this is an LAQM framework requirement. The council will have to have the action plan and work to deliver it. But in a few years' time, we may well be in the situation we've got no air quality management areas at all. That's not the end of the story, though, because we're still required to have a strategy to make sure that we keep those improvements where they are and continue that downward pressure. So all of the measures in the action plan would translate into a strategy. So we can maintain that focus, that we're not dropping the ball, we continue to look at delivering these measures, but in a much more relaxed way, with less scrutiny from DEFRA.
Thank you.
Councillor Lawrence, just to pick up a couple of points, the issue of refuse collection vehicles and buses. It's not so much a power issue, it's a space and a location, because we implement those transformers to take and to uplift that charge. Not only is that a space issue, but they also emit a hum. So it's having a good place to locate those. So there's a logistics exercise to do that. And it's just to maybe elaborate a bit on what Stuart said. We look at air quality almost from a micro to a macro level. So that report doesn't exist in isolation. Stuart's involved with the Kent Air Quality Group, and then we have a regional group that he used to sit on, and then there's a national group. So some of those seasonal exceedances that we get, we know they're of that nature just because of that wider map. You know, we've all been in Gunwharf and seen the yellow dust that have sat on your car. There's so many atmospheric things, and that's why there is a science behind it, because statistically it recognises those.
Just one more. Just to make one sort of final point on the episodes is that with the action plan is about tackling emissions at source and getting our air quality management areas gone. With the episodes, there's a different sort of issue there, that these episodes have an impact on people with pre-existing health conditions, and that's a different thing that you tackle. And one way we tackle that is through our air quality forecast service. So the Kent Air website, anyone can go onto the website, they can sign up for a forecast, they'll get an email, normally 24, 48 hours in advance of when those episodes are likely to occur, and it gives health-based advice as well. So if you've got someone with asthma or COPD or cardiovascular disease, you would find that really helpful to know when those are occurring. So that's how we tackle sort of that regional thing. We can't tackle the sources, but we can do something to inform our residents, and particularly our vulnerable groups, on when they're likely to occur.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Councillor Lawrence, really good to hear you almost advocate for something like an ultra-low emission zone in
Chair,
your
I
comments.
drive a hybrid. Why wouldn't I?
It's an interesting, actually, that's an interesting point, because people do change from once they've adapted and they've invested costs. It's economic rationalism, I might say.
To be fair, Chair, I did have an all-electric vehicle and I hated it, so I went to a hybrid. But anyway.
Okay, just to round up the last item and bring in the matters from the last item into this item, Councillor Etheridge, would you like to say, for the record?
So basically, I'm assuming the Council's draft local plan is going to be supported by a strategic transport assessment. And I just want to make sure that there's a corresponding air quality assessment that uses data to evaluate likely pollution impacts. Given Medway's existing air quality management areas and the Council's climate commitments, has the transport modelling been used to estimate additional emissions and assess the plan's compliance with legal air quality thresholds and health guidance? Thank you.
So yes, you're quite right to raise that. Air quality is a risk for the local plan, and that's the advice I've given to the planning team. So the responsibility for that piece of work will lie with the planning team to make sure that they've done that piece of work. So I can't answer for them, unfortunately. So that is a question that needs to be answered by the planning team. But certainly, we've been involved, our team, with the development of the local plan. We've written a new air quality policy to make sure that we do manage development as it goes forward, and we've got planning guidance which clearly sets out our expectations for new developments. But yeah, in terms of having that piece of work done based on the strategic transport assessment, that is the planning team's question.
Thank you for your reply. Chair, can I request through you that all members of this committee and any others that are interested in the council chamber get a copy of that plan? Thank you.
We can do. Thank you for that. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak on this item before I go back to the Vice Chair for a recommendation?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the committee commented on the proposed Medway Air Quality Action Plan 2025 to 2030 and noted that the Cabinet will be asked to agree the action plan on the 8th of July 2025. And then we've just had the recommendation added there about the copy of the plan mentioned being circulated. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Okay, we're on to item 9, the Council Plan Performance Monitoring Report and Strategic Risk Summary for Q4 24-25. There is no officer introduction needed, so it is taken as read. Does any member want to comment on anything on this matter? I did want to acknowledge that there's a new risk in terms of local government reorganisation, which I'm sure we'll be obviously going through in the next few months. So that's good to see that there, but I also note that there was no changes in any strategic risks either. Councillor Lawrence.
Chair, I've become very interested in fixed penalty notices and moving vehicle fines recently, and I noticed there's nothing in the Medway 1 plan that reports on any of this. And I understand, I've asked some questions, I'm waiting for some answers, but I'm just wondering if we could find a way of reporting the number of fines. Something like 30,000 fines have been issued in the first year of operation. And is the Medway 1 plan the place to do it, or is there another better place to do it? Thank you.
Ruth, would you like to tell that?
Yes, thank you. So we do every year, we have to publish the parking account. So the one for last year, I believe, has already been published. It should have been by now. And we do it on an annual basis. So you should be able to see in there. If for any reason, Councillor Lawrence, I'm incorrect in that, I'm happy to be corrected, but I'm pretty certain it does include all of that information.
I'm just wondering, does it also include for example, you've put cameras up on certain places in the roads, the red route fines. Does that report also report on those? School Street, we've issued 16,000 notices to drivers on School Street.
I believe it does, Councillor. If it doesn't, I know you will.
Excellent. Any other member on this item? Councillor Cook.
Yeah, just a very small point in terms of the previous conversations we've had. There was just one particular bit that stuck out to me around the comment on businesses and the kind of green industries. And I was grateful for the comment there around the applications that have just come in and that are being processed. I know that we'll receive this report back, so I don't, particularly feel I need an update before that. But I think given the conversation we just had about partners, I just wanted to draw that out and see if there was any further comment on that area, but very small area of the report. Thank you so much.
Councillor Lawrence.
Sorry, Chair. Obviously, a big section of the report does talk about employment opportunities and people transitioning from school into work, and that, and we're all aware that unemployment is increasing in Medway. Quite dramatically, actually. It's up 9% since last year. I'm really particularly worried about youth unemployment, the group 18 to 24. I don't know whether our NEETs are increasing, but I'm just wondering, this is going to start hitting some of those KPIs in the Medway 1 plan, and what's our response going to be to increasing unemployment in Medway?
Does any officer want, or is that one to somebody else to write back to?
I think probably the best way of handling it, Councillor Lawrence, is to give you a proper answer offline. I think that there are various factors to feed into that, but I think anything quick now would probably not do a very important question justice.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other members? Okay, go to Councillor Cook for a proposal.
Thank you. So members are asked to consider the Q4 2024-25 progress, the performance indicators used to monitor progress of the Council's priorities, as set out in Appendix 1 to the report. Members are asked to note the strategic risk summary as set out in Appendix 2 to the report, and we've just had the offer of the detail of unemployment statistics as requested to be provided outside the committee. Thank you.
Okay, is that seconded? Okay, excellent. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Okay, we're on to the home straight now. So we're on to the petitions report. This report is for noting only and needs no officer instruction. Does any member want to note anything about this petitions report at all? Okay, if that's the case, I'll go back to the Vice Chair for a proposal.
Thank you. The committee is requested to note the petition responses and appropriate officer actions in paragraph 4.1 of the report.
Excellent. Is that seconded? Is that agreed? Excellent. And now on to the work programme, which Nicola will introduce.
The work programme is set out in Appendix A and changes are set out in section 4.2 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any member? Okay, can I go to the Vice Chair for the final proposal?
The committee is asked to note the report and agree the work programme as set out in Appendix A to the report. The committee is asked to note the action log as set out at Appendix B to the report. Thank you, Chair.
That's seconded. Okay, is that agreed? Thank you very much for your attendance tonight. Goodbye.